It often begins in silence, a moment stolen between the endless demands of the day. You might be sitting in a quiet room, the only light coming from the screen in your hand, a gateway to a world of infinite connection. Yet, in this quiet, you feel a profound sense of disconnection. The screen shows you lives being lived, triumphs being celebrated, a relentless river of information and curated joy. And yet you feel parched, stranded on the shore of your own life. There is a strange and persistent hum beneath the surface of things, a low-grade anxiety that has become so constant it almost feels normal. It is the quiet desperation of the modern age, the feeling of being fundamentally overwhelmed, adrift in a sea of opportunities and expectations. We are told to want more, to be more, to achieve more, and so we run, we strive, we accumulate. We fill our lives with noise and distraction because in the silence, we are forced to face the chaos within. In the silence, the committee of voices in our head begins its endless, unruly meeting, rehashing the past, rehearsing the future, judging the present. We begin to suspect that our own mind, the very tool we rely on for everything, has become a source of our deepest suffering. But what if there was another way? A path that doesn't involve running faster, but simply stopping. A path that doesn't ask you to add more, but to gently let go. A path that doesn't lead outward into the world, but inward, into the vast, quiet landscape of your own awareness. For thousands of years, there has existed a profound science of the mind, a practical set of tools designed not for blind belief, but for direct experience. This is the wisdom of the Buddhist path. It is not a religion you must adopt, but a lens through which you can see your own life more clearly. It offers the radical proposition that peace is not something to be found outside of yourself in a different job, a new relationship, or a future achievement. It suggests that peace is your very nature, the clear sky that is always present behind the passing clouds of thought and emotion. This journey we are about to embark on is a journey home. It is an exploration of the mind, a gentle investigation into the nature of suffering and the possibility of its end. It is an invitation to put down the weight you have been carrying, to step out of the frantic stream of thought, and to discover the unshakable calm that has been waiting for you right here all along. Before we can speak of peace, we must first become intimately familiar with the noise. Not the noise of the world outside, the traffic, the sirens, the endless chatter of society, but the far more persistent noise that exists within our own skull. I invite you, just for a moment, to try a simple experiment. Cease all doing. If you are able, simply close your eyes and listen. Listen not with your ears, but with your attention. Listen to the space of your own mind. What do you find there? Is it a vast, silent, peaceful expanse, or is it something else? For most of us, if we are truly honest, the silence is immediately filled. A voice begins to speak, and it speaks without our permission. It might start narrating what you are doing. I am sitting here listening to these words. I wonder what the point of this is. It might immediately leap to your to-do list. After this, I need to check my email, call my mother, figure out what's for dinner. It might drag you into the past, replaying a conversation from yesterday, analyzing what you should have said differently, or it might catapult you into the future, worrying about a meeting next week, a bill that is due, a health concern that may or may not ever materialize. This incessant, chaotic, and untamed stream of thought is what ancient Buddhist teachings so brilliantly called the monkey mind. It is a perfect metaphor. Picture a monkey in a tree, not sitting peacefully on one branch, but swinging frantically, restlessly. It leaps from one branch to another, never still, grabbing for a piece of fruit here, chattering at a shadow there, agitated by the slightest breeze, always moving, always seeking, always distracted. This is the nature of our untrained mind. It cannot stay in one place. It cannot rest in the present moment. It swings from a memory of the past to a fantasy of the future, from a judgment about ourselves to a judgment about another, from a flicker of desire to a wave of anxiety. It is a constant, churning monologue, a narrator who never stops talking, and most of us have been listening to this narrator for so long, we don't even realize it's there. It is the background static of our lives. Let us look more closely at the content of this inner monologue. A great deal of it is simple narration and planning, the mind's attempt to manage our complex lives. But a surprising amount of it, when we begin to pay attention, is rooted in judgment, comparison, and fear. The voice criticizes our appearance, our performance, our worth. It compares our life to the seemingly perfect lives we see on social media, leaving us with a sense of lack. It generates worst-case scenarios, spinning elaborate fictions of future disasters that we then react to emotionally as if they were already happening. This mental chatter is largely automatic and deeply repetitive. The mind loves to carve grooves, like a river cutting a canyon through rock. The same worries, the same insecurities, the same regrets tend to play on a loop day after day. We think we are having thousands of original thoughts, but often we are just having the same few dozen thoughts thousands of times. The most profound and subtle aspect of this process, and the one that causes the most suffering, is that we are completely identified with it. We don't experience these thoughts as thoughts. We experience them as me. When the voice in the head says, "You failed," we don't recognize that a thought of failure has arisen. We believe deep in our core, "I am a failure." When a thought of anxiety about the future appears, we don't see it as a fleeting mental event. We become anxiety itself. Our physiology changes, our heart beats faster, our stomach clenches, all in reaction to a phantom. This is the great illusion. We are like someone who has fallen asleep in a movie theater and is dreaming that they are the character on the screen. We have forgotten that we are the audience, the silent, aware space in which the movie of thought is playing. We have fused with the drama, and so we are tossed about by every plot twist, every moment of suspense, every sorrowful scene. We believe we are the voice, and so we are a slave to its every whim. This is where the path to freedom begins. And it begins with a step that is both simple and radical. The first step is not to fight the monkey. It is not to argue with the voice, to try and suppress it, or to force the mind into silence. This is a battle you cannot win. Trying to stop thought with more thought is like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. It only creates more conflict, more tension, more noise. If you tell the monkey to stop moving, it will only become more agitated. If you shout at the voice to be quiet, it will only shout back louder. The true first step is simply to notice. It is the gentle, non-judgmental act of recognition. It is the conscious decision to step back from the movie screen and remember that you are the audience. Imagine you are in a dark, dusty, sealed room that has not been disturbed for years. This room is your mind. In the darkness, you are not even aware of the dust. Then, one day, someone suggests you try to clean the room. If you go in with a broom and start swinging frantically in the dark, what happens? The dust is stirred up everywhere. You are choking, you cannot see, and the room becomes 1,000 times more unbearable than before. This is what happens when we fight with our thoughts. But what if, instead of fighting, you simply find the window and open the shutters? A single beam of sunlight cuts through the darkness. For the first time, you don't just feel the dust, you see it. You can see the millions of tiny particles dancing in the light. You are not the dust. You are the one who sees the dust. The light does not judge the dust or try to destroy it. It simply illuminates it. This light is the light of awareness, of mindfulness. The practice, then, is to begin to introduce this light into the room of your mind. As you go about your day, you start to notice, there is the voice again, worrying about work. You don't judge it. You don't get lost in the story. You simply note its presence, like noticing a cloud passing in the sky. There is a thought of self-criticism. You see it, you acknowledge it, and you let it be. In this act of noticing, a space begins to open up. A separation occurs between the thought and the awareness of the thought. In that space, there is freedom. In that space, there is peace. You are no longer the monkey swinging frantically from branch to branch. You are the tree itself, rooted, stable, and still, simply aware of the monkey's antics. You are not the dust. You are the light in which the dust appears and disappears. This is the foundational practice. It is the beginning of untangling a lifetime of conditioning. It is the act of waking up from the dream of thought. We are not trying to get rid of the narrator, but simply to stop believing its every word. We learn to listen to it with a compassionate, amused detachment, as you might listen to a slightly neurotic but well-meaning friend. This process is not about achieving a perfectly silent mind. Such a thing may not even be possible or desirable. It is about changing your relationship to your mind. It is about discovering that you are not the endless chatter. You are the deep, silent awareness that hears the chatter. And in this discovery, a profound shift begins to happen. But as we stand here, at the beginning of this path, having opened the shutters for the first time, a crucial question arises. We see the ceaseless motion of the mind. We see the dust dancing in the light. Now we must ask, why is this so uncomfortable? Why does this endless stream of thought, this constant mental activity, lead so reliably to a feeling of fundamental dissatisfaction and unease? To answer this, we must turn to one of the most profound insights of the Buddha, the first great truth he shared with the world, the truth of our shared human condition. Having recognized the unceasing chatter of the monkey mind, we are now standing at the threshold of a deeper understanding. We have opened the shutters and seen the dust, and we must now ask the question, why does this mental state, this constant internal motion, cause us so much unease? To answer this, we must turn to the first great teaching the Buddha offered after his enlightenment. It is a teaching that is often misunderstood in the West, a teaching that can sound, at first, profoundly pessimistic. It is the first noble truth, the truth of dukkha. The word is often translated from the ancient Pali language simply as suffering. And immediately our minds recoil. It seems to negate all the joy, the beauty, and the love in the world. It sounds like a grim, joyless philosophy, but this translation is a profound oversimplification. To understand dukkha is not to say that life is only pain, but to see with clear eyes the fundamental nature of our experience. The word dukkha is more nuanced, more subtle. Imagine a potter's wheel that is just slightly off-center. As it spins, it creates a constant, subtle wobble. The ride is always a little bumpy, never perfectly smooth. That is dukkha. It is the pervasive, underlying sense of dissatisfaction, of things being not quite right, that hums in the background of our lives, even during moments of happiness. The Buddha, like a master physician of the mind, described 3 distinct types of dukkha, each one deeper and more subtle than the last. The first is the most obvious, the one we all readily identify as suffering. It is called dukkha dukkha, the suffering of pain. This is the raw, undeniable pain of existence. It is the headache that throbs in your temple, the sharp grief of losing someone you love, the sting of harsh words, the anxiety of a frightening diagnosis, the deep ache of loneliness. It is the pain of stubbing your toe and the agony of a broken heart. This level of suffering needs little explanation, for it is the common, explicit language of our shared human vulnerability. No one is exempt. We all experience illness, old age, and eventually death. We all face loss and disappointment. This is the most visible layer of our condition. The second type of dukkha is far more subtle and in many ways more profound. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the suffering that is woven into our happiness itself. It is the anxiety that lurks within pleasure, because on some level, we know that it cannot last. Think of the most perfect moment you can remember, a breathtaking sunset, the taste of a magnificent meal, the feeling of falling in love, the peak of a great success. The joy is real, it is vibrant, it is wonderful, but the moment is fleeting. The sun sinks below the horizon, the meal ends, the first flush of romance matures into something different. The success becomes a new baseline from which we must strive again. The suffering arises not from the happy experience itself, but from our desperate attempt to cling to it, to freeze it in time. We try to grasp the sunset, to hold on to the taste, to make the feeling last forever. And in this clinging to what is inherently transient, we create our own unease. This is the engine of our consumer culture. We buy something new, and for a moment we feel a thrill. But the thrill fades, the novelty wears off, and the object becomes just another possession. So we seek the next purchase, the next vacation, the next promotion, caught on an endless treadmill of seeking temporary highs that inevitably dissolve, leaving behind a subtle residue of disappointment. The happiness itself becomes a source of suffering because its departure leaves a void. The third type of dukkha is the deepest and most pervasive. It is sankhara dukkha, the all-pervasive suffering of conditioned existence. This is the background static, the off-center wheel. It is a fundamental unsatisfactoriness that is baked into the very nature of being a self in the world. It arises from the simple fact that we are temporary, composite beings made of constantly changing physical and mental components. Our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts, our perceptions, they are not a solid, stable entity. They are a flowing process, a fragile assembly that is inherently unreliable and vulnerable. This sankhara dukkha is the subtle, low-grade stress of having to maintain and defend this fragile sense of self. It is the energy we spend worrying about our reputation, our health, our future. It is the feeling of being fundamentally unsafe in a world we cannot control. It is the reason why you can have everything you ever thought you wanted, the perfect job, the loving family, the beautiful home, and still lie awake at night with a vague sense of unease, a feeling that something is missing. It is the existential hum of our own impermanence. To look at these three truths is not an act of pessimism. It is an act of supreme courage and realism. A good physician, upon discovering an illness, does not tell the patient, "Don't worry, everything is fine," simply to avoid discomfort. A good physician makes an honest and accurate diagnosis, because the diagnosis is the first, indispensable step toward a cure. To acknowledge dukkha is to make that clear-eyed diagnosis of the human condition. It is to finally stop pretending that the wobbly wheel is smooth, to stop ignoring the static in the background. It is to say, yes, this is how it is. Now, what can be done about it? There is a powerful story that illustrates this journey from personal agony to universal understanding. A young woman named Kisa Gotami lived happily with her husband and their infant son. One day, the child fell ill and died. Consumed by a grief so powerful it bordered on madness, she refused to accept his death. She picked up his small, lifeless body and went from house to house, from person to person, begging for medicine that could bring him back. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, a wise man told her to go to the Buddha. She went, laid her child at his feet, and pleaded for the miracle cure. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion and said, "There is only one thing that can help your son. Go into the city and bring me back a single mustard seed from a house where no one nut, a parent, a spouse, a child, or even a servantess ever died." Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her search. At the first house, a kind woman said, "Of course I can give you a mustard seed." But when Kisa Gotami asked her crucial question, the woman's face fell. "Alas," she said, "the living are few, but the dead are many. Please do not remind me of my deepest grief." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Every family had mustard seeds to spare, but every family had been visited by death. One had lost a mother, another a husband, a third a beloved daughter. Her frantic personal search for a cure slowly transformed into a profound survey of the human condition. As evening fell, she sat at the edge of the city, watching the lamps being lit, only to see them flicker and die out. In that moment she understood. Her own grief, which had felt so singular, so monumental, was in fact the shared sorrow of all beings. "How selfish I have been in my grief," she thought. "Death is common to all." She returned to the Buddha, not with a mustard seed, but with a heart that had broken open to a vast, compassionate understanding. She had seen the truth of dukkha, not as a theory, but as the living, breathing reality of the world. Her journey is our journey. We all begin by focusing on our own dukkha, our personal pain. believing it is the biggest and most important thing in the world. Then, we chase after pleasure, trying to build a life free from change, only to discover the subtle suffering of viparinama dukkha, the pain of seeing our happy moments fade. Finally, if we look deeply enough, like Kisagotami, looking at the flickering lights, we see the all-pervasive truth of sankhara dukkha, the inherent, conditioned nature of an existence that includes birth, sickness, loss, and death. Seeing this is not the end, it is the beginning. The diagnosis has been made. We have seen that the unease we feel is not a personal failure, but an impersonal truth. It is a product of the very fabric of life, a fabric woven from the threads of constant change. And so, our investigation must now turn to the nature of that change itself. We must look directly into the heart of this ceaseless flux, this universal law of existence that governs everything from galaxies to our own fleeting thoughts. Having looked directly at the pervasive nature of dukkha, the subtle dissatisfaction woven into the fabric of our lives, we are led to its direct cause. We saw in the story of Kisagotami that her suffering was transformed when she recognized the universal nature of loss. We have seen that our own unease often comes not from pain itself, but from the fading of pleasure. Both of these point to a single, powerful, and inescapable law of the universe. This is the second mark of existence, the truth of anicca, or impermanence. Like dukkha, this is a truth that we instinctively resist. We are creatures who crave stability, who seek permanence, who build monuments and write contracts in an attempt to fix life in place. But life cannot be fixed. Life is a dance, a flow, a river. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus said that you can never step into the same river twice. By the time you pull your foot out and put it back in, new water is flowing. The river has changed, and so have you. This is the essence of anicca. Everything, without exception, is in a state of constant flux. Let us first turn our gaze to the world around us. We see impermanence in the grand, sweeping cycles of nature. The solid strength of winter gives way to the tender green shoots of spring. Spring blossoms into the full, vibrant life of summer, which then gracefully fades into the magnificent decay of autumn, returning once more to the quiet stillness of winter. The cycle is constant, beautiful, and unstoppable. A mountain may seem like the very symbol of permanence, yet geologists tell us it is being constantly weathered by wind and rain, slowly but surely being ground back into dust. Even the stars in the night sky, which seem so eternal, are immense nuclear furnaces that are burning through their fuel. They are born from cosmic dust. They shine for eons, and they will eventually die, some in a quiet fading and others in a spectacular explosion. The entire universe is a symphony of arising and passing away. The car we were so proud to buy a few years ago now has scratches and strange noises. The favorite shirt we love to wear will one day fade and tear. The very home we live in is slowly settling, aging, and decaying. To see this is not to be negative. It is simply to be realistic. The world is not a collection of solid, static objects. It is a dynamic, unfolding process. Now, we must turn this lens of observation inward, and this is where the teaching becomes truly transformative and perhaps more challenging. We must observe anicca within our own being. Let us begin with the body. We cling to it and identify with it so strongly, yet it is a perfect, living demonstration of impermanence. Your body is not a fixed object. It is a river of constant change. Millions of your cells are dying and being replaced at this very moment. The food you ate for breakfast is being transformed into energy and tissue. The air you are breathing is becoming a part of you. The body you have today is not the physical body you had 7 years ago. On a cellular level, you are almost completely new. We see this in the process of aging, a process our culture teaches us to fear and resist. We spend billions of dollars trying to halt or reverse it, to cling to the illusion of a youthful, unchanging form. But this is like trying to command the tide not to turn. To accept the changing nature of our body is to find a grace and peace that no cosmetic cream can ever provide. Look, too, at your feelings and emotions. Where is the anger you felt last week? Where is the ecstatic joy you felt on your last vacation? They arose, perhaps they felt all-consuming for a time, and then they passed away. Feelings are like the weather. A storm may roll in, dark and thunderous. It feels as if it will last forever, but eventually the clouds part and the sun shines again. Happiness arises, and it feels like a perfect summer day, but that too will change. To understand the impermanence of feelings is not to stop feeling, but to stop being a slave to them. When sadness arises, we can meet it with the understanding, I know you are here, and I know you will not stay forever. This creates a compassionate space around the feeling, allowing it to move through us without overwhelming us. When joy arises, we can savor it fully, without the anxious clinging that comes from the fear of it ending. And what of our thoughts? The frantic chatter of the monkey mind. They are the most fleeting phenomena of all. A thought appears in your consciousness seemingly from nowhere. It stays for a second or a fraction of a second and then vanishes, replaced by another. Our opinions, our beliefs, our entire worldview, these too are impermanent. Think about the person you were 10 years ago. Did you have the same beliefs, the same tastes, the same ideas about the world? Most likely not. You have learned, you have grown, you have changed. The you of the past has dissolved into the you of the present, and this you will dissolve into the you of the future. This brings us to the heart of the matter, the direct link between anicca and dukkha. The impermanence itself is not the problem. The river flowing is not suffering. The seasons changing is not suffering. The suffering is created by our resistance to the flow. It is created by our clinging. We build a dam of expectations and desires, trying to stop the river of life, and then we suffer from the immense pressure that builds up behind it. We want our youth to last forever. We want our loved ones never to change or leave us. We want our moments of happiness to be permanent fixtures. In short, we demand a static world when we live in a dynamic one. This is the root of our frustration, our anxiety, our grief. We are building our house on the sand and then weeping when the tide comes in. The suffering is not the tide. The suffering is the foolishness of building on the sand and expecting it to last. There is a classic Zen story that beautifully illustrates the wisdom of embracing impermanence. A great Zen master had a teacup that was exquisitely crafted, and he treasured it. He would use it every day for his tea, and his students knew how much it meant to him. One day, a student asked him, "Master, why do you value that cup so much?" The master held it up to the light and said, "I value this cup because, to me, it is already broken." He continued, "I know that its nature is fragile, and that one day an accident will happen and it will be shattered. So every time I drink from it, I am fully present, admiring its beauty and its form, because I am aware that this may be the last time I do so. I enjoy it completely, but without attachment to its future, because in my mind, its destiny is already fulfilled." Sometime later, a student accidentally knocked the cup from a shelf, and it shattered into 100 pieces. The student was mortified, prostrating himself and begging for forgiveness. The master was perfectly calm. He simply looked at the pieces on the floor and said gently, "It is all right. The cup has simply come to the end of its journey. Its time was up." This is the freedom that comes from deeply understanding anicca. It is not a morbid or fatalistic outlook. The master was not sad that his cup was already broken. On the contrary, that understanding allowed him to love it and appreciate it more fully than anyone else. His joy was not tainted by the fear of loss. When we truly accept the impermanent nature of life, we are liberated from this fear. We are free to love people more deeply because we know our time with them is precious and limited. We are free to savor the present moment more completely because we know it will never come again in exactly the same way. The contemplation of impermanence is an antidote to taking life for granted. It is a wake-up call that urges us to be present, to be grateful, to engage with life as it is, not as we wish it would be. Letting go does not mean becoming indifferent or uncaring. It means caring so much that you are willing to love the world in its true, transient, and beautiful form. As we sit with this profound truth, as we watch the river of our own experience flow by the changing body, the changing feelings, the changing thoughts. A final, monumental question begins to emerge. If everything I identify with is impermanent, if my body, my feelings, and my thoughts are all just fleeting phenomena in a constant state of flux, then who am I? What is this self that I believe is so solid and continuous? If the river is always changing, is there a solid, unchanging rock in the middle of it that is me? Or is that sense of self just another wave, another current, another part of the ever-changing flow? It is here, at the edge of this question, that our investigation must now go. We must take the next step and examine the very nature of the I that we hold so dear. We have journeyed together into the heart of the human condition. We began by noticing the restless, chattering monkey mind. This led us to the truth of dukkha, the subtle, pervasive dissatisfaction that haunts even our best moments. Then, we uncovered the cause of this dissatisfaction, our tendency to cling to things that are, by their very nature, impermanent, a truth the Buddha called anicca. We have seen that everything we can perceive, from the distant stars to our own bodies and feelings, is in a constant state of flux. Nothing lasts. Now, we arrive at the final, most profound, and perhaps most challenging part of this diagnosis. It is the linchpin that holds the entire structure of suffering together. We must apply the universal law of impermanence to the one thing we believe is exempt, our very own self. We must ask the question, who is it that is experiencing all this? What is this I that feels, thinks, and clings? This investigation leads us to the third great mark of existence, the truth of anatta, or no self. This concept can be jarring. The idea of no self seems to contradict our most fundamental experience. From the moment we are born, we feel like a solid, continuous individual, a single entity living inside our skin, looking out at the world through our eyes. We feel like the CEO in the control room of the brain, the ghost in the machine, the thinker of the thoughts. The entire edifice of our life, our ambitions, our memories, our fears, is built upon the assumption that there is a permanent me at the center of it all. The teaching of anatta asks us to question this assumption. It invites us not to accept this blindly, but to become a detective, to conduct an investigation, and to see if we can actually find this self that we take for granted. To do this, the Buddha provided a brilliant analytical framework, a way to examine our own experience. He suggested that everything we call self can be broken down into 5 categories, or aggregates. In Pali, these are called the khandhas, which means heaps or bundles. The idea is that we have these 5 heaps of experience, and we mistakenly bundle them together, put a label on the bundle that says me, and then identify with it. Let us now, like a scientist, examine the contents of each of these 5 bundles to see if we can find a permanent, independent self anywhere within them. The first aggregate is form, or rupa. This is the physical stuff, our body with its flesh, bones, and blood. Our sense organs, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. This is the most obvious candidate for a self. But are you your body? We have already seen that the body is a classic example of anicca, impermanence. It is constantly changing. It grows, it ages, it gets sick, it gets injured. If you lose a limb in an accident, are you somehow less you? Of course not. The body is a biological process, a vehicle we inhabit for a time, but it is not the driver. It is something we have, not something we are. So the self is not found in the aggregate of form. The second aggregate is feeling, or vedana. This refers to the raw sensations that arise whenever our senses make contact with the world. These are categorized into 3 simple types: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. A cool breeze on a hot day is pleasant. The sound of a dental drill is unpleasant. The feeling of your chair against your back might be neutral. Are you your feelings? This is clearly not the case. As we have seen, feelings are like the weather, constantly shifting. If you were your joy, you would cease to exist when the joy fades. If you were your anger, you would disappear when the anger subsides. You are the one who experiences feelings, but you are not the feelings themselves. They are passing events, So the self is not found in the aggregate of feeling. The third aggregate is perception, or sana. This is the mental faculty that recognizes, identifies, and labels our experience. It's what sees a particular collection of colors and shapes and says, that is a tree. It's what hears a sound and labels it. That is a siren. It gives meaning to the raw data of our senses. But are you your perceptions? Perceptions are conditioned by our past, our culture, our language. They can be flawed or mistaken. A stick in the water can be perceived as a snake. What one culture perceives as beautiful, another may perceive as plain. Perception is a useful but unreliable mental tool. It is not a solid, unchanging self. The fourth aggregate is perhaps the one we identify with most strongly. It is mental formations, or sankhara. This is a vast category that includes all of our volitional activities, our thoughts, ideas, opinions, beliefs, prejudices, desires, ambitions, and habits. It is the voice in the head, the chattering monkey. It is the part of us that says, I think, therefore I am. But are you your thoughts? We have seen how fleeting thoughts are, arising and vanishing in an instant. Our opinions change over time. Our beliefs are often inherited from our family or society, not born from our essential nature. These mental formations are just activity, like ripples on the surface of a pond. They are not the pond itself. They are conditioned, impermanent, and impersonal processes. So the self is not found in the aggregate of mental formations. Finally, the fifth aggregate is consciousness, or vijnana. This is the fundamental quality of awareness or knowing that makes all experience possible. It is the light that illuminates everything else. There is seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling consciousness, and thinking consciousness. Surely this must be the self, but the Buddha pointed out that consciousness is also not a singular, independent entity. It is always dependent on an object. Seeing consciousness cannot exist without something being seen. Hearing consciousness cannot exist without a sound being heard. It arises in dependence on conditions, and when the conditions change, it changes. It is not a continuous, monolithic soul or spirit. It is a flickering process, a series of discrete moments of knowing, arising and passing away with every instant of experience. So we have looked through all 5 bundles that make up our entire lived experience, and we cannot find a solid, permanent, independent self anywhere. This is beautifully illustrated in a famous ancient dialogue between a Buddhist sage named Nagasena and the Greco-Indian king Milinda. The king, a sharp-witted intellectual, asked the sage his name. I am known as Nagasena, the sage replied. But Nagasena is only a designation, a name in common use. For in the ultimate sense, there is no permanent person to be found here. The king was astonished and challenged him, using the king's own chariot as an example. Nagasena calmly asked, Your Majesty, how did you arrive here? In a chariot, the king replied. Then, said Nagasena, show me the chariot. Are the wheels the chariot? No, said the king. Is the axle the chariot? Or the reins? Or the frame? To each question the king answered no. Then is the chariot something separate from all of its parts? Nagasena asked. No, said the king. Nagasena delivered the final point. Your Majesty, chariot is just a convenient name we give to the collection of these parts when they are assembled in this way. It has no separate, inherent existence. In just the same way, Nagasena is a convenient name for the collection of the 5 aggregates. But if you look for a permanent person behind them, you will not find one. This realization is not meant to be terrifying. It is meant to be the ultimate liberation. All of our lives we carry a heavy burden, the burden of the self. We spend every day polishing it, defending it, promoting it, worrying about it. This ego, this sense of a separate I, is the root of our greed. What can I get for me? Our jealousy, why do they have what I want? Our fear, what will happen to me? And our anger, how dare you offend me? It is a prison constructed of our own ideas. The teaching of Anatta hands us the key to unlock the door. When you see that there is no fixed self to defend, the whole game changes. Criticism from others is no longer a personal attack on your core being. It's just information, feedback on a collection of changing processes. Failure is no longer an indictment of your worth. It's just an event, an outcome. You become lighter, more resilient, more open. The hard, brittle shell of the ego softens, and you can connect more genuinely with the world, because the wall separating self from other is seen for what it is, an illusion. We have now completed the diagnosis. We started with the symptom, the pervasive unease of dukkha. We identified its cause as clinging, a resistance to the universal law of impermanence, anicca, and we have now uncovered the deepest root of that clinging, the mistaken belief in a solid permanent self, anatta, that we are desperate to protect and gratify. We have looked the problem squarely in the face, and it is at this very point, having laid bare the complete nature of the illness, that a great physician does not despair. It is at this point that they lay out the path to healing. Having diagnosed the condition with these 3 marks of existence, the Buddha did precisely that. He offered a clear, comprehensive, and practical prescription for the end of suffering. This prescription is a complete framework for living, a step-by-step guide from confusion to clarity. It is the very heart of his teaching, the path known as the Four Noble Truths. Having journeyed through the profound and challenging truths of dukkha, anicca, and anatta, we might feel as though we have deconstructed our entire world. We have seen that our experience is marked by a subtle and pervasive dissatisfaction. We have recognized that everything, including ourselves, is in a constant state of flux. And we have searched for a solid, permanent self and found only a shifting collection of processes. This diagnosis, while honest, can feel unsettling. It is like a physician who has just delivered a serious and complex diagnosis. But the work of a great physician does not end with the diagnosis. The diagnosis is merely the necessary prelude to the treatment. Having unflinchingly described the nature of our dis-ease, the Buddha then laid out a plan for healing that is one of the most elegant, logical, and practical frameworks for human liberation ever conceived. This is the teaching of the Four Noble Truths. These are not articles of faith to be blindly believed, but 4 profound facts or realities that we can verify for ourselves through our own direct experience. They are the master map, the soul doctor's complete plan from illness to perfect health. The first noble truth is simply the one we have already explored in depth, the truth of suffering, or dukkha. This is the courageous act of looking at our life and acknowledging the reality of the wobbly wheel. It is the admission that life, as it is ordinarily lived, contains suffering and dissatisfaction. It is the pain of loss and sickness, the stress of change and impermanence, and the subtle background anxiety of our conditioned existence. Acknowledging this is not pessimistic, it is the opposite. It is the moment we stop pretending, the moment we stop living in denial, and decide to deal with reality on its own terms. No healing can begin until the illness is acknowledged. This first truth is the physician saying, "Here is the symptom, we have a case of dukkha." The second noble truth addresses the next logical question. Where does this suffering come from? What is its origin? This is the truth of the cause of suffering, or samudaya. The Buddha, through his own deep investigation, identified a single powerful root cause, a deep-seated thirst or craving that is known in Pali as tanha. It is a feverish, compulsive grasping and clinging that drives the wheel of dissatisfaction. This craving manifests in 3 primary ways. First, there is the craving for sense pleasures, the relentless desire for more pleasant sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and physical sensations. It is the engine of materialism, the voice that whispers, "If only I had that new phone, that better car, that perfect vacation, then I would be happy." But as we know, the pleasure from these things is fleeting, and the thirst soon returns, often stronger than before. Second, there is the craving for existence, the craving to be or to become. This is the deep instinctual drive of the ego. It is the thirst for status, for recognition, for power, the desire to be somebody important, to to leave a permanent mark on the world. It is the clinging to our own identity and the fear of being insignificant. Third, and most subtly, there is the craving for non-existence, the craving to not be. When life becomes too painful, this thirst manifests as the desire to escape, to annihilate the source of the pain. It is the root of addiction, avoidance, numbness, and in its most extreme form, the desire to end one's own life. It is this three-pronged, insatiable thirst, this tanha, that fuels the fires of greed and hatred and keeps us chained to a cycle of seeking and disappointment. This second truth is the physician saying, "We have found the source of the illness. It is a persistent fever called craving." The third noble truth is the great message of hope. It is the truth of the cessation of suffering, or nirodha. This truth states, in a beautifully simple stroke of logic, that if the cause of suffering is craving, then the cure for suffering must be the complete cessation of that craving. If we can extinguish the feverish thirst of tanha, we can extinguish the suffering it creates. This is the physician's prognosis. It is the revolutionary declaration that the illness is not terminal. There is a cure. This state of cessation, this freedom from suffering, is known as nibbana, or nirvana. It is crucial to understand what this means. Nirvana is not a heavenly place you go to after you die. It is a psychological state that can be realized right here in this very life. The word literally means to extinguish or to blow out, as one would blow out a candle flame. What is extinguished are the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion fueled by craving. When these fires die down, what remains is the natural, luminous, and peaceful nature of the mind itself. It is a state of profound, calm, unshakable freedom and penetrating insight. It is the end of the bumpy ride. It is the experience of the wheel finally spinning true on its axis. This naturally leads to the fourth and final question. That's wonderful news, but how do we do it? How do we extinguish the fires of craving and realize this state of peace? The fourth noble truth is the answer. It is the truth of the path to the cessation of suffering, or magga. This is the prescription. It is the detailed, practical, step-by-step training guide that leads from suffering to freedom. This path is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. It is a complete design for living, addressing every aspect of our lives. It is composed of 8 interconnected elements: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These are not a sequence of steps to be completed one after another, but rather 8 strands that are woven together to create a strong rope that can pull us out of the mire of suffering. Each part supports and deepens all the others. It is a path of cultivating wisdom, living ethically, and training the mind. The profoundly practical nature of this 4-part framework is perfectly captured in the Buddha's parable of the poisoned arrow. A man is shot with an arrow heavily smeared with poison. His friends and family rush to his side and want to immediately call for a surgeon to remove it. But the man stops them. "Wait," he says. "Before you take this arrow out, I insist on knowing the answers to some questions. I need to know the name of the man who shot me and what caste he belongs to. Was he tall or short, dark-skinned or light-skinned? What village does he come from? I need to know what kind of bow he used and what the bowstring was made of. Was the shaft of the arrow made from a special kind of wood? What kind of feathers were used for the fletching? Was the arrowhead forged by a master craftsman? What would happen to this man? He would die from the poison long before he ever received the answers to his speculative questions." The Buddha explained that our condition is exactly like this. We have been shot by the poisoned arrow of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death. The poison of greed, hatred, and ignorance is coursing through our veins, and yet we often get caught up in metaphysical questions. Who created the universe? Is the world eternal or not? Do we have a soul that is separate from the body? What happens after we die? The Buddha said that to spend one's life pondering these things while ignoring the immediate reality of our suffering is as foolish as the man with the arrow. The task at hand is not to speculate. The task at hand is urgent. The task is to pull out the arrow. The Four Noble Truths are the surgeon's simple, life-saving instructions. First, acknowledge the wound and the reality of the poison, dukkha. Second, identify the nature of the poison as craving, samudaya. Third, understand that healing is possible if the arrow is removed, nirodha. And fourth, follow the precise medical procedure for removing the arrow and healing the wound, magga. We now have the map. We have the complete diagnosis and the full prescription. The entire journey ahead is dedicated to walking this noble eightfold path, to applying this treatment in our own lives moment by moment. It is a journey of transformation that begins not with a grand gesture, but with the simplest and most profound of actions. Learning to pay attention, the foundation of the entire path. The first skill we must cultivate is the skill of right mindfulness. It is here, in the practice of bringing our awareness back to the present moment, that we begin the real work of pulling out the arrow. We stand now at the beginning of a path, a practical set of instructions for healing. We hold in our hands the Four Noble Truths, a map that shows us the reality of our unease, its cause in our clinging, the possibility of its end, and the way to that end. This way is the Noble Eightfold Path, and the very first step we must take upon it, the foundation upon which all wisdom and compassion are built, is the cultivation of right mindfulness. In Pali, this is samasati. But what is mindfulness? The word has become so common in our culture that its meaning can feel diluted. Mindfulness is not a vague mystical state of bliss. It is not about emptying the mind or stopping thought. It is, quite simply, the quality of awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment. It is the practice of waking up from the dream of our automatic, habitual lives. And the gateway to this practice, the most reliable and accessible anchor to the present moment we all possess, is the simple, humble, and profound act of breathing. Why the breath? Of all the things we could pay attention to, why begin here? Because the breath has several unique and powerful qualities. First, it is always with us. From the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, it is our constant companion. We don't need any special equipment. We don't need to be in a quiet ashram or a beautiful temple. We can access it in a traffic jam, in a stressful meeting, in a crowded supermarket. It is utterly portable and always available. Second, the breath is always in the present. You cannot take a breath that is in the past. You cannot take a breath that is in the future. Each inhalation and each exhalation is happening right now. As we have seen, the monkey mind loves to swing between the past and the future, the two realms where suffering thrives. The breath is the anchor that we can drop right here in the present, pulling the mind back from its frantic journeys and mooring it in the calm harbor of the now. Finally, the breath is an honest mirror of our inner state. When you are anxious or frightened, your breath becomes short, shallow, and rapid. When you are calm and relaxed, your breath becomes long, deep, and slow. By simply observing the breath, without even trying to change it, we gain an intimate, real-time insight into the state of our own mind. So, how do we practice? The instructions are beautifully simple, though not always easy. First, find a posture that embodies both relaxation and dignity. You can sit on a cushion on the floor, or you can sit upright in a chair. The key is to keep your spine relatively straight, not stiff like a soldier, but like a noble tree rising from the earth. This posture helps to cultivate a sense of wakefulness. Let your hands rest comfortably in your lap and gently allow your eyes to close, or if you prefer, keep them slightly open with a soft, unfocused gaze toward the floor. There is nothing to achieve, no goal to reach. The invitation is simply to arrive, to be present with yourself for these few moments. Now, gently bring your attention to the physical sensation of breathing. You don't need to think about the breath, you just need to feel it. You might notice the sensation of the air entering and leaving your nostrils, a subtle coolness on the in-breath, a subtle warmth on the out-breath. Or you might prefer to rest your attention on the rising and falling of your chest. Or perhaps you feel it most clearly in the gentle expansion and contraction of your abdomen. Choose one of these spots to be your anchor point your home base for the attention. And now, simply rest your awareness there. Feel the entire journey of one single in-breath, from its beginning to its end, and feel the entire journey of one single out-breath. Don't try to control it or change it in any way. If the breath is short, let it be short. If it is deep, let it be deep. Your only task is to be the curious, non-judgmental observer of this natural rhythm. You are simply feeling what it is like to be alive and breathing in this moment. Sooner or later, and most likely sooner, you will notice that your mind has wandered. You set out to watch the breath, and a few moments later, you find yourself lost in a long train of thought about work or planning a vacation or replaying a conversation. This is the most important point of the entire practice. The mind wandering is not a mistake. It is not a sign that you are a bad meditator. It is simply what minds do. That is the nature of the monkey mind. The moment you realize your mind has wandered that precious moment of, oh, I'm not with my breath anymore, I'm thinking that very moment is the moment of mindfulness. You have woken up. In that instant, you have stepped out of the dream of thought and have returned to awareness. And what do you do when you notice you have been lost in thought? You do something radical. You don't criticize yourself. You don't get frustrated or sigh in exasperation. You simply and gently acknowledge where the mind has been. Thinking, and then you softly, kindly guide your attention back to the physical sensation of the breath. That's it. You return to feeling the rise and fall of the abdomen. Think of it like training a puppy. If you are teaching a puppy to sit and it gets up and wanders away, you don't shout at it or punish it. You would just gently take it by the scruff of the neck and guide it back to its spot, over and over again, with patience and kindness. Our mind is that puppy. Each time we notice it has wandered and gently guide it back to the breath, we are strengthening the muscle of attention. We are performing a single rep in the gym of the mind. The practice is not about staying on the breath. The practice is the gentle, compassionate act of returning again and again and again. There is a wonderful story of a great tightrope walker, a funambulist who could cross vast canyons on a thin wire. A crowd gathered to watch him, and someone asked, "What is your secret?" When you are on that wire, high above the abyss, do you focus intently on the platform at the other side, on your destination? The tightrope walker shook his head. "No," he replied. To focus on the destination is to become impatient, to rush, and to lose your balance. Another person asked, "Then do you focus on the ground below, on the danger, to keep yourself alert?" Again, he shook his head. To focus on the danger is to become paralyzed by fear. "Then what is the secret?" the crowd asked. He smiled and said, "There is no grand secret. The secret is that I give my complete, total, and undivided attention to the single step I am taking right now. My entire universe becomes the feeling of the sole of my foot on this 1 inch of rope. By taking care of each present step with absolute presence, the entire journey takes care of itself. For us, the breath is that tightrope. Each inhalation is a single step. Each exhalation is a single step. By giving our full, non-judgmental attention to this one breath, right now, we find our balance in the midst of the vast and often chaotic chasm of our lives. We are not trying to get anywhere else. We are learning to be fully where we already are. Through this simple, repeated practice, we begin to change our relationship with our own mind. We learn that we are not our thoughts, but the calm, aware space in which thoughts arise and pass away. We are transforming an unconscious process into a conscious one. We are waking up. This practice of anchoring in the breath is the foundation. It is our home base. Once we have learned to steady our attention here, even for just a few moments at a time, we can begin to broaden our field of awareness. We can begin to explore other aspects of our present moment experience with the same gentle curiosity. And the most natural place to expand this awareness to next is the very container of the breath, the landscape of our own physical form. We will learn to bring this same quality of mindful attention to the sensations of our body, turning our entire physical presence into a field for meditation and discovery. Having established a foothold in the present moment through the breath, we have found our anchor. The practice of returning to the simple, rhythmic sensation of breathing provides a home base, a place of relative calm to which we can retreat from the storms of the mind. Now, with this newfound stability, we can begin to broaden our horizons. We can lift the anchor and begin to explore the vessel it has been holding steady your own body. For many of us living in the modern world, the body has become little more than a vehicle, a convenient taxi service for carrying our heads from one place to another. We live in our thoughts, our plans, our screens. We are often profoundly disconnected from the very organism that gives us life. This next practice is an invitation to come home. It is a journey of re-inhabitation, of learning to live in our bodies not just as disembodied minds. It is the practice of the body scan. Why is this so important? Because the body has its own deep intelligence. It is a vast and sensitive instrument that is constantly registering our experience long before the conscious mind labels it. The body is the storehouse of our unprocessed emotions and the barometer of our well-being. The tightness you feel in your shoulders after a stressful day at work is the stress. The knot in your stomach before a difficult conversation is the anxiety. The heaviness in your chest when you feel grief is the sadness. The body speaks a language, not of words, but of sensation. But because we live so much in our heads, we have forgotten how to listen. We ignore these signals, we override them, we push through them until they become so chronic we don't even notice them anymore. Or they manifest as illness and burnout. The body scan is the practice of relearning this forgotten language. It is a systematic process of listening with gentle curiosity to the messages the body is sending us in every moment. Let us begin. Find your posture once again, one that is both comfortable and alert. Allow your eyes to close gently. Take a few deep, conscious breaths, feeling the air fill your lungs and the gentle release of the exhalation. Let each out-breath be an invitation to soften, to let go of any obvious, unnecessary tension you might be holding. Now, let your breath settle into its own natural rhythm, and for a moment, just rest your awareness on that anchor point. We have already cultivated the rise and fall of your abdomen or the sensation of air at the nostrils. From this place of relative stillness, I invite you to gently shift the focus of your attention. Without moving them at all, bring your awareness all the way down through your body, down your left leg, and into the toes of your left foot. See if you can feel your toes from the inside. You are not trying to create a sensation or to imagine one. You are simply opening up your awareness to feel what is already there. You might notice a sense of warmth or coolness. You might feel a tingling or a pulsing. You might feel the pressure of one toe against another, or the contact with a sock or a shoe. Or you might feel very little at all, a kind of numbness. That is perfectly fine. The goal is not to feel something special. The goal is simply to pay attention. If there is an absence of sensation, you simply become aware of the absence of sensation. Now, with a gentle, receptive awareness, allow your attention to expand from the toes to include the sole of your left foot. Feel the arch, the ball of the foot, the heel resting against the floor or your shoe. Explore this landscape of sensation with the curiosity of a gentle explorer mapping a new land. Then, allow the awareness to move up into the ankle, the lower leg, the shin, and the calf muscle. You might imagine your breath flowing down into this part of your body on the in-breath and flowing out from it on the out-breath, bringing a quality of soft, kind attention to it. Continue this journey up into the knee and then into the large muscles of the thigh, all the way up to the hip joint, feeling the entirety of your left leg now pulsing with life. Then, gently shift your attention to the toes of your right foot and begin the same unhurried journey on the other side, moving slowly from the toes to the sole, the heel, the ankle, the lower leg, the knee, and the thigh. There is no rush. There is nowhere to get to, nothing to achieve. There is only the simple, profound act of being present with the living reality of your body, one small section at a time. Now, bring your awareness to the pelvic region, the base of your torso. Feel the weight of your body where it makes contact with the cushion or the chair. This is a powerful sensation of gravity of being grounded to the earth. From here, let your awareness travel slowly up your back. Notice the gentle curve of your lower back. Are there sensations of tightness or of ease? Whatever is there, simply meet it with your awareness. Continue up into the middle back, and then the upper back and the shoulder blades. This is an area where many of us hold a great deal of unconscious tension. As you rest your attention here, perhaps breathing into the shoulder blades, see if you can allow them to be met with a sense of softness and acceptance. You are not trying to force them to relax, but simply offering them the gift of your kind attention. Move your awareness now to your abdomen. Feel the gentle, rhythmic rise and fall with each breath. This is the soft, vulnerable center of your body. Notice any sensations: hair gurgling, tightness, warmth. Then expand the field of awareness to include your entire chest, feeling the more subtle movement of the breath here, and perhaps the sensation of your own heartbeat, a quiet, steady rhythm deep within. Bring this same gentle curiosity into your hands. Feel your fingers from the inside. Are they warm or cool? Can you feel the faint pulsing of blood in your fingertips? Trace the awareness up through your wrists, your forearms, your elbows, and your upper arms, all the way to your shoulders, feeling the full length of both arms, alive and filled with sensation. Now, bring your attention to the neck and throat, another common storage place for tension. Gently notice what is here, and then allow the awareness to fill your entire face. Soften the jaw, an area where we clench with determination or anxiety. Feel your lips, your nose, the muscles around your eyes. Let your forehead be smooth and wide. Finally, let your awareness rest on the very top of your head, and then, for a few moments, feel your entire body as one single field of sensation, from the tips of your toes to the top of your head, buzzing, vibrating, breathing, a living, unified organism. There is a wonderful analogy for this practice. Think of a master carpenter. Before they ever begin to build something, they spend time with the wood. They run their hands over its surface, feeling the texture of the grain. They notice its density, its weight. They see where the knots are, where the wood is strong, and where it is weak. They do not get angry at a knot and try to force it out. They understand that the knot is part of the wood's nature, part of its history. They learn to work with it, to honor it, sometimes even to make it the most beautiful feature of the finished piece. This is because they have cultivated an intimate, respectful relationship with their material. For most of us, our body is a material we have long ignored. We have treated it as an object, an it, and we get angry when it doesn't perform as we wish. The practice of the body scan is the practice of becoming that master carpenter. It is the process of learning, with patience and kindness, the nature of our own material. It is about cultivating an intimate and respectful friendship with our own body. As we do this, we begin to heal the artificial split between mind and body. We are no longer a ghost in a machine, but a fully embodied, integrated being. This has a powerful grounding effect. While our thoughts can spin off into elaborate fantasies of the past and future, the body is always, undeniably, here and now. The feeling of your feet on the floor is real. The rhythm of your breath is real. Anchoring your awareness in the body is a powerful antidote to getting lost in the unreality of anxious thought. It brings you home to what is true in this moment. As we become more sensitive to the landscape of the body, we begin to notice something else. The sensations we encounter are not just neutral data. They are almost always tinged with a subtle feeling tone. The warmth of your hands in your lap might be subtly pleasant. The tightness in your neck is likely unpleasant. The feeling of your shirt on your arms is probably neutral. This coloring of our experience into pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral is the next layer of reality we must investigate. It is the crucial link between a physical sensation and our emotional reaction. This is the domain of what the Buddha called Vedana, and it is to this fundamental aspect of our experience that we will turn our attention next. Having learned to inhabit our bodies through the body scan, we have become more attuned to the subtle language of sensation. We have moved our awareness from the focus point of the breath to the wider landscape of our physical form. In doing so, we inevitably discover a new layer of experience, a quality that colors every sensation we perceive. A tightness in the jaw is not just a tightness, it is unpleasant. The warmth of a cup of tea in our hands is not just warmth, it is pleasant. The feeling of our clothes against our skin is neither of these, it is neutral. This immediate, pre-verbal flavor of experience is what the Buddha called Vedana. It is often translated as feeling, but it is much more fundamental than a complex emotion like love or jealousy. Vedana is the raw, primal feeling tone that determines whether we like, dislike, or are indifferent to any given experience. And it is here, at this crucial juncture between sensation and reaction, that the seeds of suffering are sown. The Buddha told a powerful story to illustrate this. He said that an ordinary, untrained person who experiences an unpleasant physical sensation is like a person shot by an arrow. The pain is real, sharp, and unavoidable. But then, this person immediately reacts to the pain with fear, anger, and worry. They think, "Why me? This is terrible. I can't stand this. When will it end?" This mental reaction, the Buddha said, is like being shot by a second arrow right in the same spot. The pain of the first arrow was unavoidable, but the pain of the second arrow, the arrow of our mental reactivity, is entirely self-inflicted. The practice of observing Vedana is the practice of learning not to shoot ourselves with that second arrow. To do this, we must first understand our habitual automatic reactions to the three types of feeling tones. When we experience a pleasant feeling, the taste of delicious food, the sound of beautiful music, the feeling of a successor unconscious reaction is to grasp, to cling. A thought arises, "I like this, I want more of it, I hope it never ends." This is the thirst, the tanana, that we spoke of earlier. We try to hold on to the pleasant feeling, but because of anicca, impermanence, it must fade. And when it does, our clinging leads to disappointment and a renewed sense of lack. We are left chasing the next pleasant experience, a ghost that we can never truly capture. When we experience an unpleasant feeling, a headache, the sting of criticism, the anxiety of being stuck in traffic or automatic reaction, is the opposite. It is aversion, pushing away, resistance. A thought arises, "I hate this, get it away from me, make it stop." We tense our body against the sensation, we fight it in our mind. This resistance, this internal war against what is already present, is the second arrow. It doesn't remove the unpleasantness of the first arrow, it only adds a new layer of mental anguish on top of it. We end up suffering not just from the headache, but from our intense hatred of the headache. And what of the third type, the neutral feeling? The sensation of the floor beneath our feet, the sight of a plain wall, the sound of the refrigerator humming. Our habitual reaction to neutral Vedana is to ignore it. We tune it out, it is boring. Our mind, restless and seeking stimulation, immediately drifts away, looking for something pleasant to grasp or something unpleasant to resist. This ignoring of the vast majority of our life's experience is a form of ignorance or delusion. We are simply not present for most of our own lives. The practice of mindfulness of Vedana is about interrupting this automatic, three-pronged reaction of clinging, aversion, and ignorance. It is about inserting a single moment of conscious awareness between the feeling, tone, and our habitual response. The technique is simple, yet profound. As you sit in meditation, or as you go about your day, you begin to notice this flavor of experience. When you feel the ache in your back, instead of launching into the story of "my bad back," you simply and gently note in your mind, "unpleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling." You are not judging it or trying to fix it. You are simply recognizing its presence accurately and without drama. When you feel a moment of deep calm or joy, instead of getting excited and trying to hold on to it, you can gently note, "pleasant feeling, pleasant feeling." You are appreciating it without grasping, allowing it to be what it is, a temporary visitor. By doing this, you are depersonalizing the experience. It is no longer "I am in pain" or "I am happy." It becomes "there is an awareness of an unpleasant feeling," or "there is an awareness of a pleasant feeling." This subtle shift in language and perspective creates a space. In this space, you are no longer the victim of your feelings. You are the calm, compassionate observer of them. There is a beautiful poem by the 13th century mystic Rumi that describes this practice perfectly. He writes, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Imagine your mind is this guest house, and you are the host. You don't get to choose who shows up at your door. Some days, a radiant guest named Joy arrives, and your instinct is to lock the door behind him, to try and make him stay forever. Other days, a dark, heavy guest named Sadness knocks, and your instinct is to pretend you're not home, to barricade the door. A fiery, shouting guest named Anger might try to break the door down. The foolish host lives in a state of constant chaos, trying to control the guests. But the wise host, Rumi says, welcomes them all. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows, who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The practice of observing Vedana is the practice of becoming this wise host. It is the practice of meeting whatever feeling tone arrives at the door of your senses with a calm, accepting presence, knowing that none of them are permanent residents. They are all just visitors, passing through. Another powerful way to visualize this is to think of your own core awareness as the vast, open, boundless blue sky. This sky is your true, nature-clear, spacious, and fundamentally peaceful. The feelings, the Vedana, are like the weather. Pleasant feelings are like beautiful, white, puffy clouds on a summer day. Unpleasant feelings are like dark, turbulent storm clouds. Neutral feelings are like a hazy gray overcast. The crucial insight is this: the clouds are not the sky. The weather is not the sky. The storm clouds may block the view of the blue, but they can never, ever stain or damage the sky itself. The sky remains untouched. Our mistake is that we forget we are the sky. When a dark cloud appears, we contract around it and believe, I am a dark cloud. We become the storm. Mindfulness of Vedana is the radical act of remembering that you are the sky. You learn to rest in your sky-like nature, allowing the clouds of pleasantness, unpleasantness, and neutrality to drift through without resistance, without clinging. You see them for what they are, temporary weather patterns in the vast, open space of your own awareness. With this practice, you are no longer tossed about by every wave of liking and disliking. You find an equanimity, a balance, that is not based on having only pleasant experiences, but on your ability to be present with all experiences. You have stopped shooting yourself with the second arrow. This is a profound form of freedom. And as we become more adept at noticing these raw feeling tones, a new question arises. An unpleasant feeling comes, we note it, and then what? Often, the mind immediately grabs it and weaves it into a narrative. The unpleasant tightness in the chest, Vedana, is instantly woven into a story about being insulted by a coworker, complete with mental images and internal arguments, and this whole package becomes the complex emotion of anger. The pleasant feeling of calm, Vedana, is woven into a story about how well your meditation is going and how enlightened you are becoming, and this becomes the complex state of pride. The next logical step in our investigation, then, is to turn the light of our awareness onto this storyteller, this weaver of narratives. We must look directly at the mind itself, the source of our complex emotional world. Our journey inward has taken us from the vast landscape of the body to the subtle, ever-present flavor of our feelings. We have learned to stand as wise hosts in the guest house of our being, meeting both pleasant and unpleasant feelings with a balanced and accepting presence. We have learned not to shoot ourselves with the second arrow of reactivity. Now, we must venture one step deeper into the very heart of the command center, the place where our inner world is created, interpreted, and given its emotional charge. We must turn the light of awareness onto the mind itself. This is the practice of Satanopassana, or mindfulness of mind, and it is here that we can begin to untangle the very roots of our confusion and distress. At first, this can sound like a paradox. How can the mind look at itself? It seems like an eye trying to see itself, an impossible task. But the practice is simpler than that. It is not about the mind analyzing itself with more thought. It is about recognizing the quality or the color of the mind in any given moment. We tend to think of our mind as a single, consistent thing-me mind. But in reality, the mind is not a monolith. It is a ceaselessly flowing river of different states, moods, and qualities. One moment it is clear and calm like a still mountain lake. The next, it is turbulent and muddy like a river in flood. One moment it is bright with joy. The next, it is gray with boredom or red with anger. The practice of mindfulness of mind is simply learning to recognize what color the mind is in this moment, without judging it, and, most importantly, without believing that the temporary color is you. The method is a direct extension of what we have already been doing. Just as we noted pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling, we now learn to note the state of the mind itself. We step back from the content of our thoughts and simply ask, what is the quality of my mind right now? Then we apply a gentle, soft mental label. For example, you might be sitting and suddenly a surge of desire arises for something food, a new possession, a different experience. Instead of getting lost in the fantasy, you simply note, the mind with wanting is present, or more simply, wanting. A few moments later, a memory of a past hurt might arise, bringing with it a familiar tightening and heat. Instead of reliving the drama, you note, the mind with aversion is present, or simply, aversion, anger. Perhaps you find yourself feeling dull, sleepy, and unfocused. You can note, the mind with confusion is present, or dullness. This practice is not only for these unwholesome states, which are traditionally categorized as greed, hatred, and delusion. We also apply this awareness to the states we deem positive. When a feeling of genuine warmth and kindness towards someone arises, you can note, the mind with loving kindness is present. When you are deeply absorbed and focused on a task, you can note, the concentrated mind is present. When you feel a moment of peace and clarity, you note, the peaceful mind is present. Why note the positive states? Because if we cling to them, they too become a cause for suffering when they inevitably change. The goal is to see all mental states with the same balanced, impartial awareness. They are all just passing phenomena. This simple act of naming or noting is incredibly powerful. It works a kind of magic. Unwholesome states like anger, jealousy, or obsessive desire thrive in the darkness of unconsciousness. They have the most power over us when we are completely fused with them, when we believe I am angry. They are the secret puppeteers pulling our strings from behind the curtain. But the moment we turn and shine the light of mindful awareness on them, the moment we can look at the anger and say, ah, I see you. You are the mind with anger. The spell is broken. The state is no longer the subject running the show. It becomes an object of our observation. It is no longer me, it is an it. And in that shift, it begins to lose its grip. It becomes shy under the steady, non-judgmental gaze of awareness. There is a wonderful story that illustrates this principle. Imagine your mind as a house, and inside this house are all your precious belongings, your peace, your clarity, your compassion. A thief, let's call him Anger Loves, to sneak into this house to cause mayhem and steal your peace. The thief is clever. He knows that the best time to enter is when the house is dark and the owner is asleep or not at home. That is, when you are living on autopilot, lost in unconscious thought. In that darkness, he can roam freely, knocking over furniture, breaking things, and taking whatever he wants. You only realize he has been there later, when you see the damage he has left behind. Now, imagine a different scenario. You, the homeowner, have decided to practice mindfulness. This is like deciding to stay home, turn on all the lights, and sit quietly in a chair, simply being present. The house is filled with a gentle, steady light. Now, when the thief Anger tries to creep through the door, he is immediately seen. The light of your awareness falls directly upon him. He is exposed. He freezes. He cannot go about his thieving business while being calmly observed. You don't have to fight him. You don't have to yell at him or try to throw him out, which would just create a violent struggle and break more furniture. All you have to do is keep the light on. All you have to do is maintain your calm, watchful presence. I see you, your presence says. I see the mind with anger is here. Seeing he has been discovered, the thief might hesitate at the doorway for a while, but eventually, unable to operate in the light, he will retreat of his own accord. This is the power of mindfulness. We don't have to fight our difficult mental states. We just have to turn on the light. Through this repeated practice of observing the changing colors of the mind, we arrive at one of the most liberating insights on the spiritual path. We begin to understand in our bones that we are not the contents of our mind. If you can see the anger, you cannot be the anger. If you can be aware of the anxiety, you cannot be the anxiety. If you can watch a thought of jealousy arise and pass away, you cannot be that jealousy. The one who sees is not the thing that is seen. Gradually, our identity begins to shift. We stop identifying with the passing clouds of our thoughts and moods and start to identify with the vast, open, sky-like awareness in which they appear. We realize that our true nature is not the turbulent weather, but the boundless sky which contains the weather. The sky is never harmed by a storm. The ocean is never fundamentally disturbed by a wave. The movie screen is never altered by the most violent or tragic movie being projected upon it. This awareness becomes our refuge. It is a place of deep peace and stability that is always available, no matter what drama is unfolding in the mind. As we continue this practice of watching the mind, we will inevitably start to notice that certain visitors, certain thieves, show up more often than others, especially when we try to quiet down and meditate. They are like the usual suspects, the common patterns of obscuration that cloud the mind's natural clarity. Buddhist psychology has identified and cataloged these common obstacles with brilliant precision. They are known as the 5 hindrances, the 5 main ways that the mind gets entangled and loses its peace. To become a more skilled homeowner, a more adept watcher of the mind, it is immensely helpful to get to know these 5 frequent intruders intimately. We must learn to recognize them, understand how they operate, and learn the specific antidotes that prevent them from taking over our inner home. As we become more adept at watching the mind, we begin to notice familiar patterns. Certain mental states arise again and again, like recurring characters in a play, and their primary effect is always to disturb our peace and obscure our clarity. They are the master thieves who specialize in stealing our attention. They are the common clouds that reliably block the natural radiance of our awareness. In Buddhist psychology, these 5 primary obstacles are known as the 5 hindrances. To get to know them is not to find fault with ourselves, but to become skilled practitioners. A doctor must be able to identify specific illnesses to prescribe the right medicine. A gardener must be able to distinguish weeds from flowers. For us, learning to recognize these hindrances is the key to cultivating a clear, calm, and workable mind. To understand their effect, imagine that your mind, in its natural state, is like a bowl of clear, still water. It is pure and transparent, capable of perfectly reflecting the world as it is, reflecting the truth. The 5 hindrances are 5 different ways that this water can be disturbed, making it impossible to see a clear reflection. The first hindrance is sensory desire, or kamakanda. This is the mind caught in the grip of wanting something pleasant through one of the 5 senses. When you are trying to meditate, this is the mind that starts fantasizing about the delicious dinner you will have later. It's the mind that drifts off into a sexual fantasy, or plans the perfect vacation, or longs for the comfort of your bed. It's the restless seeking of pleasure and stimulation. When sensory desire takes over, it is like pouring a brightly colored dye into the bowl of water. The water becomes red, or blue, or green. It might be vibrant and alluring, but it is no longer clear. You can no longer see your own reflection in it. All you can see is the color of your desire. The antidote to sensory desire is twofold. In the moment, we can simply note it without judgment. Desire, wanting. By naming it, we see it as an impersonal event rather than a personal command we must obey. For a more direct approach, we can apply the wisdom of impermanence, reminding ourselves that the pleasure we seek will be fleeting and will not bring lasting satisfaction. Gently, we then guide our attention back to our primary object, like the breath, returning from the world of fantasy to the reality of the present moment. The second hindrance is ill will, or bhayapada. This is the energy of aversion, resistance, and hatred. It can be as intense as rage, or as subtle as a quiet simmer of resentment, a cold knot of judgment, or a constant inner critic finding fault with everything. It is the mind replaying old arguments, nursing grievances, and wishing harm or misfortune upon others or ourselves. When ill will arises, it is like putting the bowl of water on a fire and bringing it to a boil. The water bubbles and churns violently. It is turbulent, hot, and scalping. It is completely impossible to see any reflection in water that is boiling. The primary antidote to ill will is one of the most beautiful practices we have, the cultivation of loving, kindness, or metta, which we will explore in depth later. It is the practice of actively wishing ourselves and others well. In the moment, we can meet the anger with mindful awareness, noting anger, aversion, and feeling the raw, hot energy in the body without being swept away by the stories it tells. By meeting this fiery energy with the cool water of patient awareness, we rob it of its fuel. The third hindrance is sloth and torpor, or thina mida. This is not simple tiredness from a lack of sleep, but a deep mental heaviness, a dullness, a sinking energy. It's a thick fog that descends upon the mind, making it sluggish and unworkable. In meditation, this is the head-nodding sleepiness, the feeling that your mind is encased in molasses, the overwhelming urge to just give up and take a nap. This is the mind that says, I just can't be bothered. When sloth and torpor are present, it is as if the bowl of water has become stagnant and is now completely overgrown with a thick layer of slimy algae and weeds. No light can penetrate its murky surface. The water is heavy and lifeless. The antidote here is to arouse energy. We can work with the body, sit up straighter, open the eyes, take a few deep breaths. We can engage the mind, reflect on the preciousness of this opportunity to practice, or recall a time we felt inspired and energetic. If the sleepiness is overwhelming, the wisest course is often to get up and do a period of walking meditation, bringing movement to the body and mind. It is a matter of learning to recognize the sinking feeling and intentionally applying a counteractive, uplifting energy. The fourth hindrance is restlessness and worry, or uddaka kukuka. This is the agitated monkey mind in its most classic form. Restlessness, uddaka, is a kind of cant, settle-down energy, the mind flitting from one thought to another like a frantic bee. Worry, or regret, kukucha, is a specific form of this, where the mind gets caught in anxious loops about the future or guilty remorse about the past. It is the mind that simply cannot be still, constantly distracted by what-ifs and if-onlys. When restlessness and worry arise, it is like a strong wind constantly blowing across the surface of our bowl of water. The water is whipped into 1,000 tiny choppy waves. The surface is so agitated and broken that any reflection is completely shattered and distorted. The most effective antidote for this windy mind is to return to the anchor of the breath, but with a particular focus on the lower body. Feeling the feet on the floor or the weight of the body in the chair can help ground this scattered energy. Naming the state cleary restlessness or worrying is also very powerful. It allows us to see the wind for what it is, rather than being the wind itself. The fifth and final hindrance is skeptical doubt, or vicikiccha. This is not the intelligent inquiry that seeks to understand, but a cynical, corrosive, and indecisive state of mind that undermines our practice. It is the whispering voice that says, am I doing this right? Is this really working? Maybe this is all a pointless waste of time. I'm probably not cut out for this. This kind of doubt leads to a state of inner paralysis, where we can neither commit to the practice nor abandon it, leaving us stuck in a frustrating state of inaction. When skeptical doubt is present, It is as if someone has scooped up a handful of mud and sand and stirred it vigorously into our bowl of water. The water becomes completely opaque, murky, and turbid. You cannot see your reflection, and you cannot see the bottom. You lose all faith and trust in the water itself. The antidote to doubt requires a measure of wise trust. We can seek out clear instructions from a trusted teacher or text to resolve our intellectual questions. We can reflect on our motivation for starting this path in the first place. But ultimately, the best antidote is to commit to the practice for a set period of time, putting the doubt aside with a let's just see attitude and giving it a fair chance. We learn to trust the path by walking it, not by endlessly questioning whether we should take the first step. These 5 hindrances are the primary obstacles to our peace, but they are not who we are. They are simply temporary visitors, common clouds that obscure the sun of our awareness, familiar ways in which the water of our mind gets clouded. Our work is not to hate them or to wage a violent war against them. Our work is to become a connoisseur of our own mind, recognizing them when they arise, understanding their nature, and skillfully applying the appropriate antidote. When they are not present, the mind is naturally calm and clear. Our practice is simply to create the conditions for them to settle. And a garden does not become beautiful simply by removing the weeds. We must also actively cultivate the flowers. Having learned to work with the forces that obscure the mind, we must now turn to the practice of actively cultivating the wholesome states that bring light, warmth, and beauty to our inner world. And the most foundational, most powerful, and most healing flower we can choose to plant is the flower of loving kindness. Having learned to skillfully work with the 5 hindrances, we have begun the essential task of weeding our inner garden. We can now recognize the patterns of desire, aversion, dullness, restlessness, and doubt that obscure the natural clarity of our mind. But a healthy garden is not merely one that is free of weeds. It is one in which beautiful and nourishing plants are actively cultivated. The spiritual path is not just about removing the negative. It is equally about fostering the positive. We now shift our focus from what we seek to release to what we seek to grow. And the most foundational, life-affirming, and healing quality we can possibly cultivate is the boundless, radiant warmth of what in the Pali language is called metta. Metta is most often translated as loving kindness. It is crucial, however, to understand that metta is very different from our usual conditional ideas of love. It is not the possessive, romantic love between partners. It is not the sentimental affection we feel for something cute. Metta is an unconditional, benevolent intention. It is a steady, heartfelt wish for the genuine well-being and happiness of a being. Imagine the sun shining in the sky. It does not choose who to shine upon. It pours its warmth down on saints and sinners, on flowers and stones, on everyone and everything, without discrimination. Metta is like that inner sun. It is a silent, powerful radiation of goodwill, a fundamental friendliness toward all of life. It is the sincere wish from the bottom of our heart for ourselves and for all beings to be safe, to be healthy, to be happy, and to live with ease. It is the direct and powerful antidote to the second hindrance of ill will, but its effects are far more profound, transforming our entire inner landscape from a place of fear and contraction to one of warmth and openness. The practice of cultivating metta, known as metta bhavana, begins in a place that may seem surprising, and for many of us is the most challenging. It begins with ourselves. Our culture often teaches us that to focus on ourselves is selfish, and we are conditioned with a harsh inner critic that constantly tells us we are not good enough. But you cannot give to others what you do not have yourself. Trying to pour loving kindness from an empty cup is an exercise in futility. Therefore, the first and most essential step is to learn to offer this warmth and friendliness to our own being. To practice, we find our comfortable meditation posture. We can begin by bringing to mind an image that evokes a feeling of warmth and tenderness. Perhaps you can visualize yourself as a small, innocent child deserving of love and protection. Or you can simply place a hand over your own heart, feeling the physical warmth there. Then, We begin to silently repeat a series of phrases, like planting seeds in the soil of the mind. These are not affirmations we are trying to force ourselves to believe, but gentle intentions we are offering to ourselves. The traditional phrases are, may I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I live with ease. As you repeat these phrases, do so slowly, letting their meaning resonate within you. May I be safe from inner and outer harm, from fear and anxiety. May I be healthy in body and in mind, strong and full of vitality. May I be truly happy, content, and at peace with myself. May I live with ease, free from struggle, navigating the challenges of life with grace. It is important not to look for a particular feeling. On some days, you may feel a great warmth. On other days, you may feel nothing at all, or even resistance. That is perfectly fine. The practice is not in the feeling, it is in the sincere, patient intention of the offering. If your inner critic arises and says, you don't deserve this, you can even offer metta to that critical part of yourself, recognizing that it too is just trying to protect you, albeit in an unskillful way. You are learning to be your own best friend. Once you have spent some time offering loving kindness to yourself, creating a foundation of inner warmth, you can begin to expand the circle. The second stage is to bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom you feel easy, uncomplicated love and gratitude. Picture this person clearly in your mind's eye. See them smiling and offer them the very same phrases. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Allow your heart's natural warmth to flow out to them. Notice how it feels to wish someone well so purely. In the third stage, we stretch our capacity for kindness. We bring to mind a neutral person. This could be a cashier at a store you frequent, a person you see on your daily commute, or a neighbor you don't know well. We usually ignore such people, but here we consciously bring them into our awareness. We recognize that this person, just like us, wants to be happy and to avoid suffering. Their life is as complex and important to them as ours is to us. And so, we offer them the same sincere wish. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be happy, may you live with ease. In this act, we begin to break down the walls of indifference that separate us from the vast majority of humanity. The fourth stage is the most challenging, and it is a testament to the courage of this practice. We bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict, someone who has hurt us, or someone we simply dislike. It is vital to understand the intention here. This is not about condoning their harmful actions or forcing a false forgiveness. This practice is primarily an act of liberation for ourselves. Holding onto anger and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. By offering metta to a difficult person, we are choosing to release ourselves from the prison of our own hatred. We can recognize that their harmful actions likely come from their own deep suffering and confusion. And so, we can offer the wish. May you be free from the suffering that causes you to act this way. May you find peace, and in that wish, we find our own peace. If this feels too difficult, you can start with someone you find only mildly irritating, or simply hold the intention of non-harm. Finally, in the fifth stage, we let our loving kindness become boundless. We expand our awareness from these specific individuals to encompass all beings everywhere. We radiate this benevolent wish outwards in all directions, front, back, left, right, above, and below. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease. We extend it to friends and enemies, to humans and animals, to beings seen and unseen in all corners of the universe. In this final stage, the heart transcends all boundaries of us and them, and we touch upon a profound sense of interconnectedness with all of life. The power of this practice cannot be overstated. There is a famous story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates this. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, conspired to assassinate him. He got a huge, formidable elephant named Nalagiri, drunk on alcohol, maddening it into a raging, destructive beast, and then unleashed it onto the narrow lane where the Buddha was calmly walking. People screamed and fled in terror. The Buddha's devoted attendant, Ananda, bravely tried to shield him with his own body. But the Buddha told him to stand aside and remained perfectly calm, facing the charging elephant. He did not raise a weapon or a hand. He simply stood, and from his heart, he radiated an immense, powerful, and unconditional field of pure metta toward the enraged animal. As Nalagiri thundered toward him, it entered this palpable field of loving kindness. Its rage began to melt away. Its murderous intent dissolved. Its gait slowed, it lowered its trunk, and it walked peacefully to the Buddha and knelt before him, allowing the Buddha to gently stroke its head. This story shows that metta is not a weak, passive, or sentimental emotion. It is a profound force, a tangible energy that has the power to pacify the most violent forms of hatred, both in the world around us and, more importantly, within our own hearts. As we cultivate metta, the wish for ourselves and others to find happiness and well-being, our heart naturally becomes softer and more open. And when a heart that has been opened by metta encounters the reality of suffering in the world, its response undergoes a beautiful and subtle transformation. The simple wish for happiness evolves into an active, urgent wish for the suffering to end. This trembling of the heart in the face of pain, this profound empathy and desire to help, is the next stage of our heart's development. It is a quality known as karuna, or compassion, and it is the natural and inevitable flowering of a heart that has truly learned the meaning of loving kindness. Having planted the seeds of metta, or loving kindness, in the garden of our hearts, we have begun to cultivate a fundamental warmth and friendliness towards ourselves and all of life. We have nurtured the sincere wish for all beings to find happiness. But as we open our hearts, we inevitably encounter not only the potential for joy, but also the pervasive reality of pain. We see the suffering in our own lives, in the lives of those we love, and in the world at large. A heart that has been softened by metta cannot remain indifferent to this pain. Its response is a natural, profound trembling, a deep and heartfelt movement. This movement, this quivering of the heart in the face of suffering, is the birth of karuna, or compassion. It is the shift in intention from may you be happy to the active and urgent wish, may you be free from your suffering. It is essential at the outset to distinguish true compassion from its more common and less helpful counterfeits, pity and empathic distress. Pity looks down from above. It creates a separation between the one who pities and the one who is pitied. It has an air of superiority, of, "Oh, you poor thing, I am so glad I am not in your position." Pity reinforces the ego of the person feeling it and can feel condescending to the person receiving it. It is a form of emotional distance. Empathic distress, on the other hand, is a form of over-identification. It is feeling another's pain so acutely that we become overwhelmed and drowned by it ourselves. We see a friend in grief, and we become so consumed by our own sadness for them that we become helpless. We cry more than they do, and they end up having to console us. This is sometimes called idiot compassion because, while well-intentioned, it is not helpful. It makes the other person's suffering all about our own inability to bear it. Karuna, true compassion, walks a wise middle path between the cold distance of pity and the chaotic overwhelm of empathic distress. Compassion feels with someone, not for them. It is the capacity to be present with suffering, to feel its reality in our hearts, but to do so from a place of strength, balance, and wisdom. It is the heart of a skilled surgeon who feels deeply for her patient's illness, but maintains a steady hand and a clear mind so she can perform the operation that will bring healing. Compassion says, "I see your pain. I am here with you in it. We are in this together, and I hold the clear intention to do whatever I can to help alleviate it." It is courageous, resilient, and deeply connecting. It closes the gap between self and other, recognizing our shared vulnerability and our shared desire to be free from pain. Like metta, the cultivation of compassion begins with ourselves. It is impossible to offer genuine compassion to others if we meet our own suffering with harshness, judgment, and denial. We must first learn to be a compassionate friend to ourselves. The practice is to turn our attention inward and recall a time when we have suffered, whether physically or emotionally. It could be the memory of an illness, a heartbreak, a failure, or a deep loss. Instead of pushing the memory away, we allow ourselves to gently touch the feeling of that pain. And as we hold that memory, we offer ourselves the phrases of compassion. May I be free from this suffering. May I be free from this pain. May I find peace and healing. We learn to meet our own wounds not with criticism, but with the gentle, soothing balm of self-compassion. This is a profound act of healing. From this foundation, we expand the circle. We bring to mind a person we love who is currently suffering. We visualize them and their pain, and we allow our heart to connect with their struggle. We then extend the wish, silently and sincerely, may you be free from your suffering. May you be released from your pain. May you find strength, peace, and healing. We breathe in their suffering, and we breathe out a wish for their relief, a feeling of light and peace. We are not trying to magically take their pain away, but to hold them in a space of boundless, compassionate regard. Then, we widen the circle further still to encompass all the suffering of the world. We think of those in hospitals, those experiencing war, famine, or injustice. We think of the silent, hidden suffering behind the closed doors of our own neighborhoods. We let our hearts break open to the reality of the world's pain. This is not to become depressed or overwhelmed, but to awaken within us the vast, heroic heart that has the courage to face reality as it is. We recognize that everyone, without exception, is struggling in their own way, and so our wish becomes universal. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering. May all beings be released from their pain. In the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism, this ideal of boundless compassion is embodied in the archetypal figure of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of compassion. A bodhisattva is a being who, on the verge of their own final enlightenment, makes a vow to postpone it and remain in the world to help all other beings find freedom from suffering. Avalokiteshvara is often depicted with 1,000 arms and 1,000 hands, and in the palm of each hand is an eye. The 1,000 eyes symbolize the all-seeing wisdom that perceives the cries and sorrows of every being in every corner of the universe, missing no one. The 1,000 hands symbolize the boundless capacity for skillful action, the ability to reach out and offer exactly what is needed in any situation. A helping hand, a word of comfort, a courageous act, a moment of presence. This is not the image of a passive, sorrowful deity. It is the image of engaged, active, and tireless compassion, a representation of the incredible potential that lies dormant within our own hearts. It is said that at one point, Avalokiteshvara looked out upon the world and was so overcome with grief at the sheer immensity of its suffering that his head exploded into 11 pieces. Amitabha Buddha, seeing his plight, reassembled the pieces into 11 heads so he could better hear all the cries of the world. But as he tried to reach out to all who were suffering, his 2 arms shattered. Again, Amitabha Buddha came to his aid, giving him 1,000 arms to better help them. This story powerfully illustrates the journey of compassion. The initial response to the world's pain can be overwhelming, a shattering of our own hearts. But if we stay with it, our capacity grows. Our heart does not just break, it breaks open, becoming vast enough and strong enough to hold the world's sorrow without being destroyed by it. This strength requires wisdom. Compassion without wisdom can be ineffective or even harmful. True compassion is always coupled with panna, or wisdom. It understands that the most helpful action is not always the most obvious one. It is the wisdom that knows the difference between giving a starving person a fish for a day and teaching them how to fish for a lifetime. It is the wisdom of a parent who allows their child to struggle with a puzzle, knowing that the struggle itself is what will build the child's own capacity and resilience. Wise compassion doesn't just seek to alleviate the symptom, it seeks to address the root cause of the suffering. This raises a final, crucial question. If we truly open our hearts this way, if we endeavor to become like Avalokiteshvara with his 1,000 eyes and hands, how do we keep from burning out? How do we maintain our balance and strength while standing in the midst of so much pain? To hold this immense compassion, our heart needs a container. It needs a quality of stability, of spaciousness, of profound balance that allows us to feel deeply while remaining centered and unshaken. This essential, balancing quality, the fourth and final of these great heart practices, is called upekkha, or equanimity. It is the calm and steady heart that makes our compassion sustainable and truly effective. Having opened our hearts with loving kindness and deepened them with compassion, we are faced with a profound and practical challenge. If we truly allow ourselves to feel the wish for all beings to be happy and to tremble at the immense suffering present in the world, how do we avoid being completely overwhelmed? How do we keep our hearts open without shattering into 1,000 pieces? How do we offer our help without being crushed by the weight of a world we cannot fix? The answer lies in the fourth and final of these sublime states of the heart, the great protector and balancer known as upekkha, or equanimity. If metta and karuna are the radiant, outward-moving energies of the heart, upekkha is the deep, unshakable ground upon which they stand. It is the calm, spacious container that allows us to love and care deeply without losing our center. It is absolutely crucial to understand what equanimity is and what it is not. In our culture, it is easily mistaken for its near enemy, indifference. Indifference is a state of coldness, of apathy, of I don't know and I don't care. It is a form of shutting down, a defense mechanism rooted in fear and ignorance. Equanimity, on the other hand, is not cold. It is cool. It is not a shutting down, but a vast opening up. It is the pinnacle of a caring heart, one that cares so much that it is willing to see the whole picture, to accept reality as it is, without being swayed by personal preference. Upekkha is balance, even-mindedness, and profound composure. It is the capacity to be fully present with the ever-changing dance of life, with its joys and sorrows, its successes and failures, without being thrown off balance. A powerful image for upekkha is that of a great ancient mountain. Imagine this mountain rooted deep in the earth, its peak reaching into the sky. Throughout the days and seasons, it is assailed by what are known as the 8 worldly winds. The wind of praise blows, and people sing of the mountain's beauty and majesty. The wind of blame blows, and people complain that it blocks their view or is too difficult to climb. The wind of gain blows, and precious minerals are discovered on its slopes. The wind of loss blows, and landslides scar its face. The wind of pleasure comes with the warm sun and gentle breezes. The wind of pain comes with freezing ice and violent storms. The wind of fame spreads the mountain's renown far and wide, and the wind of disrepute brings tales of those who have perished on its cliffs. All these 8 winds blow with great force, but the mountain remains unmoved. It is not that the mountain is indifferent to the weather, it is fully intimate with it. It feels the warmth of the sun and the bite of the frost, but its fundamental stability, its deep-rootedness, is never compromised. The mountain's well-being is not dependent on which wind is blowing. This is equanimity. It is the cultivation of a mind that is so stable, so grounded in a deeper truth, that it is not constantly knocked over by the inevitable praise and blame, gain and loss of worldly life. This quality is what makes our compassion sustainable and wise. A heart without equanimity can suffer from what is called compassion fatigue. We try to help someone, but they don't get better. We pour our energy into a cause, but we don't see the results we want. Without equanimity, this leads to frustration, despair, and burnout. We end up retreating with a resentful heart. Equanimity allows us to offer our help freely and fully, but without being attached to the outcome. We do our best, we offer our love and support, and then we let go, honoring the complexity of life. This capacity to let go is rooted in a deep understanding of the law of karma, the principle of cause and effect. In its simplest form, this means that every being is the owner of their own actions and the heir to the consequences of those actions. We can offer guidance, we can shine a light on the path, we can extend a helping hand, but we cannot walk the path for another person. Their happiness and their suffering are ultimately shaped by their own choices, their own mental states, and their own actions. The wise parent understands this perfectly. A parent's love for their child is immense, metta. They feel their child's pain when they fall, karuna. But a wise parent knows they cannot prevent the child from ever falling down. The child must stumble and skin their knee to learn how to walk and run. The wise parent doesn't rush in to solve every problem for their teenager, because they know that navigating challenges is how the teenager builds their own strength and wisdom. This ability to love fully while allowing others the dignity of their own journey, this balanced wisdom that knows when to step in and when to step back, is the very essence of upekkha. These four qualities, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity are known collectively as the Brahma Viharas, or the divine abodes. They form a complete system for a healthy and liberated heart. Metta is the radiant warmth. Karuna is the heart's response to pain. The third quality, which we haven't yet named, is mudita, or sympathetic joy. It is the heart's response to the happiness and success of others. It is the opposite of envy and jealousy. It is the ability to celebrate another's good fortune as if it were our own. And finally, upekkha, equanimity, is the great spacious ground that holds and balances the other three. It ensures that our loving kindness does not become clinging attachment. It ensures that our compassion does not become overwhelming grief. It ensures that our sympathetic joy does not become manic excitement. Equanimity is the quality of wisdom that brings all the other heart practices into perfect harmony. The cultivation of equanimity often grows naturally from a mature mindfulness practice. As we sit and watch our thoughts, feelings, and sensations arise and pass away without reacting, we are practicing hundreds of micro moments of equanimity. We are learning, on a visceral level, not to be swayed by every passing inner state. We can also cultivate it more directly. A traditional meditation for upekkha involves reflecting on the truth of karma, using a phrase like, "All beings are the owners of their actions. Their happiness and suffering depend on their deeds, not on my wishes for them." This is not a cold, detached statement. It is a profound recognition of reality that fosters humility, releases us from the burden of trying to control the uncontrollable, and allows us to love more freely and wisely. With this final quality of equanimity, we have completed our survey of the practices for cultivating a liberated heart. We have learned how to observe the mind, how to clear away the hindrances that cloud it, and how to actively grow the beautiful qualities of love, compassion, joy, and balance. We have spent this time working diligently on our inner world. Now, the crucial question becomes, how do we bring this inner transformation out into the world? How does a person with a mindful, compassionate, and balanced heart interact with others? The most direct, frequent, and powerful way we affect the world around us is through the faculty of speech. Every word we utter has the power to build up or to tear down, to heal or to wound, to create peace or to sow conflict. The next stage of our journey on the Noble Eightfold Path, therefore, is to learn how to make our speech a perfect expression of our inner cultivation. We must now explore the art and practice of what the Buddha called right speech. Having cultivated the vast, open spaces of the heart through loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity, our inner world begins to transform. We have learned to be a friend to ourselves and to meet the world with a balanced and caring presence. But this inner cultivation is only half of the journey. The true test of our practice lies not in the silence of meditation, but in the noise of the marketplace, in our interactions with others. The most immediate, constant, and potent way we interact with the world is through our words. The faculty of speech is the bridge between our inner state and our outer reality. Every word we speak is an action, a form of karma that sends ripples out into the world, with the power to heal or to harm, to create harmony, or to sow discord. Therefore, the next crucial step on the Noble Eightfold Path is the practice of right speech, or samavacha. It is the art of learning to make our communication an expression of our deepest wisdom and compassion. The Buddha, with his characteristic clarity, broke right speech down into four essential components, four gates through which our words must pass if they are to be considered right. These are not commandments handed down from on high, but practical, observable guidelines for skillful and beneficial communication. The first gate of right speech is to abstain from false speech. At its most basic level, this means not telling lies. It is a commitment to truthfulness, to representing reality as we understand it. But it goes much deeper than simply avoiding outright falsehoods. It includes the subtle forms of dishonesty we often permit ourselves. Exaggeration to make a story more interesting or to make ourselves look better. Telling white lies to avoid minor inconveniences. Making promises we don't intend to keep. Using flattery to manipulate someone, or misleading by omission, by leaving out a crucial piece of information. In our digital age, this also includes spreading news or information on social media that we have not verified, contributing to a culture of misinformation. To practice this aspect of right speech is to cultivate a profound integrity. It simplifies our lives immensely, for we no longer need to keep track of a complex web of deceptions. We can rest in the simple peace of what is true. The second gate is to abstain from divisive or slanderous speech. This is speech that is intended to set one person or group against another. It is the poison of gossip, of talking behind someone's back, of carrying tales from one person to another to create drama and conflict. When we engage in this, we may feel a temporary, small sense of power or of being in the know, but we are actively destroying the fabric of trust that holds relationships and communities together. This includes much of the toxic discourse we see online, where people are demonized and entire groups are pitted against each other. The practice here is to become a force for harmony. It is to make the courageous choice not to participate in gossip, to refuse to listen to slander, and to speak in ways that encourage understanding and reconciliation. It is to ask ourselves, will these words bring people closer together or drive them further apart? The third gate is to abstain from harsh speech. This is speech that is intended to cause pain. Its motivation is anger, contempt, or cruelty. It includes the obvious forms like yelling, cursing, and insults, but also the more subtle forms of verbal violence, biting sarcasm, mockery, belittling comments, and a condescending tone of voice. Harsh speech is a weapon. It may win an argument in the short term, but it always wounds the other person and, in a deeper way, wounds ourselves, reinforcing patterns of anger and hatred within our own heart. The practice of gentle speech does not mean we become doormats or that we can never disagree or set firm boundaries. It means we learn to do so with care and respect, choosing words that are clear and firm, but not cruel. It is the art of speaking the truth in a way that the other person can actually hear it, rather than shutting them down with the force of our anger. The fourth and final gate is to abstain from idle chatter. This is speech that is pointless, frivolous, and empty. It is chatter for the sake of chatter, speaking simply to fill the silence because we are uncomfortable with it. It is the endless talk about trivialities that serves no real purpose, dissipates our mental energy, and clutters the minds of both speaker and listener. In a world saturated with information and noise, this form of speech is rampant. It is the mindless commentary on every passing event, the hours spent on meaningless gossip, the constant need to have an opinion on everything. The practice of avoiding idle chatter is a practice of valuing silence. It is choosing to speak with intention and purpose. It means that when we do speak, our words have more weight, more meaning, because they are not diluted by a constant stream of nonsense. These 4 guidelines are immensely helpful, but we can also distill them into a more proactive tool for our daily lives. Before we speak, we can train ourselves to pause just for a fraction of a second and run our intended words through a series of 4 questions. First, is it true? If it is not true, we should not say it. Second, is it kind? If it is true but not kind, perhaps it is better left unsaid, or we must find a gentler way to say it. Third, is it necessary or beneficial? A statement might be both true and kind, but completely useless. If it serves no purpose, perhaps we can enjoy the gift of silence instead. And fourth, is it the right time? This is the question of wisdom and sensitivity. A piece of advice, even if true, kind, and necessary, can be deeply harmful if offered at the wrong moment. such as when a person is in the midst of raw grief and simply needs a silent presence. By practicing with these 4 gates, our speech becomes far more intentional, skillful, and compassionate. Furthermore, right speech is only half of the equation of communication. The other, equally important half, is right listening. We can practice what the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh called deep listening. This is very different from our normal way of listening, where we are usually just waiting for our turn to speak, formulating our response, judging what is being said, and listening through the filter of our own opinions. Deep listening is an act of pure compassion. It is to listen with only one purpose: to give the other person the space to express themselves, to empty their heart, and to suffer less. It involves offering our full, undivided presence. We don't interrupt, we don't immediately offer advice or try to fix their problem. We simply listen with an open heart, trusting that the act of being truly heard is one of the most profound forms of healing we can offer another human being. Our words are creative forces. With them, we build our world and shape our relationships. A Zen story tells of a master who was hiding a refugee in his temple. A threatening samurai warrior came to the gate and demanded, "Is the man I am looking for hiding in here?" The master, being committed to both truthfulness and non-harming, was in a difficult position. A no would be a lie. A yes would lead to the man's death. Instead of answering directly, the master looked calmly at the samurai and said, "You seem like a person of great strength and discipline, but the one you are looking for is not here." The samurai, his ego flattered and his purpose diverted by the ambiguous truth, eventually left. The master did not live one the samurai was really looking for. His own inner peace was indeed not to be found by killing another man. This is an example of speech that is wise, truthful, and compassionate all at once. It demonstrates that with practice, our speech can become a tool of incredible skill and artistry. Having brought our inner cultivation to the bridge of speech, we have begun to truly integrate our practice into our lives. But our interaction with the world is not limited to our words. Our physical deeds, the way we conduct ourselves, and the way we earn our living, are also powerful expressions of our inner state. Therefore, our path now calls us to broaden our focus, to examine the actions of our body and our life's work, ensuring that they too are aligned with the principles of non-harming, wisdom, and compassion. This leads us directly to the next steps on our journey, the practice of right action and right livelihood. Having learned to make our speech a vehicle for truth and kindness, we now broaden our lens to encompass all of our physical deeds. For while words are powerful, our actions in the world are the ultimate expression of our inner state. They are the final printout of our intentions, the tangible way we shape our reality and the lives of others. The Noble Eightfold Path addresses this through 2 interconnected limbs: right action, or sama kamanta, and right livelihood, or sama ajiva. Together, they guide us in transforming our entire life, from the smallest daily chore to our professional career, into a conscious and ethical practice. This is where our meditation comes off the cushion and learns to walk, work, and live in the world. Right action provides the fundamental ethical framework for our conduct. It is grounded in the principle of ahimsa, or non-harming. It asks us to live in such a way that we minimize the harm we cause to ourselves and to other beings. The Buddha outlined this practice in 3 core trainings. The first is to abstain from taking life. This is a deep commitment to revering life in all its forms. On its most obvious level, it means not intentionally killing other creatures, but it can be practiced on many levels. It can inform our choices about diet, leading us toward a way of eating that causes less suffering. It can manifest as a gentle refusal to swat an insect, instead carefully escorting it outside. But most importantly, it is an inner cultivation. It is the practice of rooting out the seeds of violence in our own hearts, so that our presence in the world becomes one of safety and peace for all beings around us. The second training in right action is to abstain from taking what is not given. This is the practice of refraining from stealing. Again, this extends far beyond the obvious act of theft. It means respecting the property and resources of others completely. It includes not taking office supplies for personal use, not using a friend's subscription service without their permission, not cheating on our taxes, and not infringing on the intellectual property of artists and creators. At its heart, it is a practice of cultivating radical honesty and a deep sense of contentment. When we are content with what we have, the desire to take from others simply doesn't arise. It fosters a mind of integrity and simplicity. The third training is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is the practice of bringing respect, care, and responsibility to our intimate lives. It means causing no harm to ourselves or others through our sexual expression. This involves a commitment to honesty and fidelity within our relationships. It means ensuring that consent is always enthusiastic, clear, and freely given. It means avoiding any form of exploitation or treating another person as a mere object for our own gratification. It is a practice of honoring the vulnerability and dignity of ourselves and others, ensuring that our sexuality is an expression of genuine connection and care rather than a source of suffering, confusion, or betrayal. Right livelihood extends this ethical foundation into the realm of our work. For most of us, our job is where we spend the majority of our waking hours. The energy we put out into the world through our work has an enormous impact. Right livelihood, therefore, encourages us to earn a living in a way that is not harmful and, if possible, is actively beneficial. The Buddha specifically named several types of wrong livelihood, including professions based on selling weapons, dealing in human beings, such as slavery, raising animals for slaughter, selling intoxicants or poisons, and any profession based on deception. In our complex modern world, we can expand on this principle. We can ask ourselves, does my work exploit other people or the environment? Does my company rely on deceptive advertising or unfair labor practices? Am I contributing to a culture of addiction, greed, or heedlessness? These can be difficult questions with no easy answers, but to ask them is a profound act of practice. The ideal is to find work that aligns with our values, that allows us to be of service. But even if our current job is not ideal, we can still practice right livelihood within it by bringing integrity, honesty, kindness, and a spirit of helpfulness to all of our tasks and interactions. It is not just what we do, but how we do it. A janitor who performs their work with mindfulness and a sense of care for the people in the building is practicing right livelihood more deeply than a CEO of a charitable foundation who is driven by ego and greed. This leads us to the heart of mindful action, the informal practice of turning every moment into a meditation. We tend to create a false division between our meditation time and the rest of our life. The real goal is to dissolve this boundary. Any activity, no matter how mundane, can become a profound practice of presence if we bring our full, non-judgmental attention to it. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh gave the perfect teaching on this. A student asked him how they could continue their practice outside the formal setting of the meditation hall. The master replied, "When you wash the dishes, wash the dishes." He explained that while you are washing the dishes, if you are thinking about the cup of tea you will drink afterwards, or worrying about a project at work, then you are not truly alive during that time. You are a ghost, haunted by the future and the past. You are not really washing the dishes. You are just splashing water around. But, he said, if you can give your full attention to the act itself, to the feeling of the warm water on your hands, the smoothness of the ceramic plate, the scent of the soap, the sound of the water then washing the dishes becomes a miracle. In that moment, you are fully present, fully alive. The chore is no longer a burden to be rushed through, but an opportunity to be awake. This principle can be applied to everything. When you are walking, feel the soles of your feet, making contact with the earth with each step. When you are driving, feel your hands on the steering wheel and be aware of the road, instead of being lost in an angry or anxious internal monologue. When you brush your teeth, feel the sensation of the bristles on your gums, taste the toothpaste, be present for those 2 minutes of your life. The goal here is not perfection. It is not about becoming a hyper-efficient robot who performs every task flawlessly. That would just be another form of tension. The goal is simply presence. It is about gently replacing the distracted, agitated mind with a calm, attentive mind. It is about finding the sacred in the ordinary. When we approach our actions this way, our entire relationship to our life changes. Chores become less burdensome, and our engagement with the world becomes richer and more meaningful. We are no longer just getting through the day. We are living it, moment by precious moment. Our lives are a constant interplay of doing and receiving, of action and consumption. Having examined how to bring mindfulness to our speech and our physical actions, the energy we put out into the world, we must now turn the same mindful inquiry to the energy we take in. We are constantly consuming. We consume food and drink. We consume information from the news and social media. We consume entertainment, and we consume the moods and opinions of the people around us. Just as our actions have consequences, our consumption profoundly shapes our inner world. To live a truly conscious life, we must therefore learn to consume with wisdom and intention. This brings us to the next essential practice, the art of mindful consumption. Having aligned our speech and our actions with the principles of non-harming and mindfulness, we have begun to build an ethical and conscious framework for our lives. We have turned our attention to the energy we put out into the world. Now we must complete the circle and apply this same mindful awareness to the energy we take in. Our life is a continuous process of consumption. From morning until night, we are taking things into our body-mind system. This is not just about the food we eat, but about everything we allow to cross the threshold of our senses. We consume sights and sounds, information and entertainment, the company of others, and the very air we breathe. Each act of consumption is a form of nourishment, and it either contributes to our health, peace, and clarity, or to our sickness, agitation, and confusion. The practice of mindful consumption is the art of becoming a wise gatekeeper for our own being, consciously choosing to nourish ourselves with that which is wholesome and life-affirming. The most tangible place to begin this practice is with the food we eat. For many of us, eating is a completely unconscious act. We eat while watching television, while scrolling through our phones, while working at our desks, or while driving. We shovel food into our mouths without ever truly tasting it, disconnected from our body's signals of hunger and fullness. The practice of mindful eating transforms this mundane act into a profound meditation, a moment of deep connection with our bodies and with the earth. It can begin before the first bite. Take a moment to simply look at the food on your plate. See the colors, the shapes, the textures. Take a moment to reflect on the miracle that this food represents. Contemplate all the causes and conditions that had to come together to make this meal possible. The sun, the rain, the soil, the seeds. Think of the farmer who toiled in the fields, the truck driver who transported the produce, the person who stocked the grocery shelf, and the one who prepared the meal. In this simple bowl of food, the entire universe has conspired to nourish you. To touch this sense of gratitude and interconnectedness is to begin eating mindfully. Then, as you eat, do so slowly. Put down your fork between bites. Engage all of your senses. Smell the aromas. Chew your food thoroughly, savoring the complex flavors as they unfold in your mouth. Notice the textures. By slowing down, you not only enjoy your food more, but you also give your body time to register that it is being fed, and you become more attuned to its natural signal of when it is full. You are no longer just fueling a machine, you are participating in a sacred ritual of nourishment, recognizing in each bite of bread the entire cosmos, from the wheat field to the distant sun. Just as we must be mindful of what we feed our bodies, we must be even more vigilant about what we feed our minds. In our modern age, we are surrounded by a buffet of mental junk food, engineered to be as addictive and unhealthy as any processed snack. We are immersed in a 24-hour news cycle that thrives on fear and outrage. We scroll through social media feeds that are precision designed to provoke envy, comparison, and a sense of inadequacy. We are served a diet of sensationalism, gossip, and tribalistic conflict that leaves our minds in a constant state of agitation. Just as a diet of junk food leads to physical sickness, a diet of mental junk food leads to anxiety, depression, anger, and a fractured attention span. To navigate this toxic information environment, we can employ a powerful tool for discernment, a practice inspired by a story about the philosopher Socrates. It is called the test of the three sieves. One day, an acquaintance ran up to Socrates bursting with excitement. "Socrates," he said, "I have just heard some amazing news about one of your friends." "Hold on a moment," Socrates replied calmly. "Before you tell me, have you passed your news through the three sieves?" The man looked confused. "The three sieves?" Socrates explained. "The first sieve is the sieve of truth. Are you absolutely certain that what you are about to tell me is true?" The man thought for a moment and said, "Well, no, I just heard it from someone else." "I see," said Socrates. "Then let us try the second sieve, the sieve of goodness. Is what you want to tell me something good about my friend?" The man replied, "No, on the contrary, it's something quite bad." "So," Socrates continued, "you wish to tell me something bad about my friend, and you are not even sure if it is true. Let us now try the final sieve, the sieve of usefulness. Will this information be of any use to me?" The man sheepishly replied, "No, not really." Socrates concluded, "If what you wish to tell me is neither true, nor good, nor useful, then why tell it to me at all? We must become our own Socrates. We must become the gatekeeper of our own mind. Before we click on that outrageous headline, before we get drawn into that online argument, before we spend an hour consuming celebrity gossip, we can pause and apply the three sieves. Is this information likely to be true? Is consuming this good for my mind, will it cultivate kindness, clarity, and peace? Is this information useful? Will it help me to live a better, wiser life? By asking these questions, we shift from being passive consumers of mental garbage to being active curators of our own consciousness. We choose to nourish our minds with that which is true, good, and useful, with art that inspires, with knowledge that illuminates, with stories that cultivate compassion, and with the profound nourishment of silence. Finally, the practice of mindful consumption expands our awareness to include its impact on the entire world. Our personal choices, multiplied by billions, are what create the global economy and shape the health of our planet. Mindful consumption means recognizing this connection. It is to ask, where did this product come from? How was it made? Were people or animals exploited in its production? What will be its environmental impact when I am finished with it? These are not easy questions, and the goal is not to become paralyzed by guilt. The goal is to awaken from the dream of consequence-free consumption. It is to recognize that every dollar we spend is a vote we cast for the kind of world we want to live in. By choosing to support local, ethical, and sustainable businesses, by reducing our waste, and by simplifying our needs, our personal practice of mindfulness becomes a powerful act of compassion for the planet and for future generations. In the end, we are the ones who decide what we take in. We are the guardians at the gates of our own body and mind. We can choose to be unconscious consumers, tossed about by every craving and every advertisement, feeding ourselves a diet of distraction and agitation that leaves us feeling empty and sick. Or we can choose to be mindful consumers. We can choose to nourish our bodies with healthy food, eaten with gratitude. We can choose to nourish our minds with information and entertainment that is true, kind, and beneficial. And we can choose to make our consumption a conscious act of care for the entire web of life of which we are a part. And as we consider all that we consume, we must turn to one of the most potent and complex forms of consumption there is, our relationships and interactions with other people. For we not only consume their words and their ideas, but their very presence, their moods, and their energy. How we navigate these intimate connections is a vital aspect of a conscious life, and it is to this practice of mindful relationship that we now turn. Having learned to bring mindfulness to our actions and our consumption, we have started to build a life of conscious integrity. We have examined the energy we put out and the energy we take in. Now, we must turn this mindful awareness to the most dynamic, challenging, and ultimately rewarding arena of human life, our relationships with others. It is easy to feel peaceful and enlightened while sitting alone on a meditation cushion. It is another matter entirely to maintain that peace in the midst of our interactions with a partner, a child, a parent, or a difficult colleague. Relationships are the ultimate crucible for our practice. They are like perfect mirrors that reflect back to us, with unflinching honesty, exactly where we are open and where we are closed, where we are wise and where we are still caught in patterns of reactivity. They are not a problem to be solved, but a sacred ground on which to practice love, patience, and wisdom. Our culture, particularly when it comes to romantic relationships, often sets us up for suffering. We are raised on a myth of a soulmate or the one a perfect person who will complete us, understand our every need without our having to ask, and provide us with lasting happiness. We search for this perfect other, and when we find someone we love, we place upon them the impossible burden of being the source of our fulfillment. The wisdom of the Dharma invites us to dismantle this myth and approach our relationships with a profound and liberating realism. First, we must bring the wisdom of anicca, or impermanence, into our hearts. The person you are in a relationship with today is not the same person they were 5 years ago, and they will be a different person again in 5 more years. You are also constantly changing. To cling to a memory of the person you first fell in love with, or to demand that the relationship remain in its initial honeymoon phase forever, is to fight a battle against reality itself. People grow, interests change, bodies age, and circumstances shift. True love is not about freezing a person in time. It is about having the courage and flexibility to love the person who is right in front of you, right now, and to gracefully navigate the inevitable changes that life brings to you both. Second, we apply the wisdom of anatta, or no self. We must release the idea that our partner is a solid, fixed entity whose primary job is to meet our needs. They are, like us, a complex, flowing process of thoughts, feelings, and conditioning. They have their own history, their own wounds, and their own causes for suffering. Seeing them through the lens of anatta allows us to have more compassion. When they act in a way that hurts us, instead of seeing it as a malicious act from a solid bad person, we can see it as the result of their own temporary conditioned suffering. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it depersonalizes it, allowing us to respond with more clarity and less reactivity. Finally, we apply the wisdom of dukkha. No single human being can ever be the source of our ultimate, unshakable happiness. To place this expectation on a partner is to set them up for failure and to set ourselves up for disappointment. Our relationships can be a source of profound joy, comfort, and connection, but the deepest peace must be cultivated within our own hearts. When we release our partner from the impossible job of making us happy, we free them to be who they are, and we free ourselves to find a more reliable and authentic source of well-being within our own practice. With this wiser foundation, we can then bring the tools of our practice directly into our communication. Right speech and deep listening are the cornerstones of a mindful relationship. When a conflict arises, our training in deep listening invites us to pause our own defensive agenda and truly hear our partner's perspective. Can we listen with the sole intention of understanding their pain, even if we don't agree with their interpretation? This single act can de-escalate conflict with miraculous speed, and when it is our turn to speak, we can use the 4 gates of right speech. Is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it beneficial to our connection? Is this the right time to say it? This prevents us from using our words as weapons and instead turns them into tools for building bridges of understanding. A great deal of our suffering in relationships comes not from the other person's actions, but from the stories we tell ourselves about their actions. Your partner arrives home late from work. That is the objective event. The story your mind might spin is, they don't care about me. Their work is more important than our relationship. They are being selfish. It is this story, this interpretation, that generates the intense feelings of anger, sadness, and resentment. The practice of mindfulness allows us to see the gap between the event and our story about it. We can learn to recognize our stories as mental events. There is the they don't care story, rather than as absolute truth. This doesn't mean we don't address the issue of coming home late, but we can do so from a place of clarity, responding to the actual event rather than reacting to the dramatic and often inaccurate movie playing in our own head. There is a classic Zen story that brilliantly illustrates this point. Two monks were traveling together, their vows including a strict rule never to touch a woman. They came to a river where the current was strong, and a beautiful young woman was hesitating on the bank, afraid to cross. Without a word, the senior monk walked over, lifted the woman onto his shoulders, carried her across the churning river, and set her down gently on the other side. He then continued his journey. The junior monk was utterly scandalized. He was horrified that his master had broken such a fundamental rule. For hours, he walked behind in fuming silence, his mind replaying the scene, building a case against the senior monk. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he burst out, "How could you do that? You know we are forbidden to touch a woman. You have violated your vows." The senior monk looked at him with a calm, gentle expression and replied, "Brother, I put that woman down by the river hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" This story is a perfect metaphor for our relationships. Our partners, friends, and family will inevitably do things that we perceive as wrong or hurtful. The event happens, and then it is over. The real question is, how long do we continue to carry it in our minds? How long do we allow the story of the transgression to poison our present moment? The practice is to learn to put the woman down by the river, to let go of the stories and grievances we carry, and to meet each new moment with freshness and openness. Ultimately, the healthiest relationships grow from a place of inner wholeness. If we enter a relationship looking for someone to fill our emptiness, to give us the validation and self-worth we don't have for ourselves, the relationship becomes a fragile negotiation based on neediness. But when we practice for ourselves, when we cultivate self-compassion, when we find our stability in our own awareness, we come to the relationship as a full person. We are not there to get something, but to share something, the fullness of our own presence and care. This is a gift, not a transaction. Of course, even with all these practices and wise views, relationships will still be challenging. They will inevitably trigger our deepest conditioning, bringing powerful emotions like anger, fear, and jealousy to the surface. A mature practice does not mean we will never again feel these things. It means that when these powerful energies do arise, we have the tools to work with them skillfully, to meet them with mindfulness and compassion, rather than letting them take over and cause harm to ourselves and those we love. Therefore, our journey must now turn to face these inner storms directly. We must learn the art of transforming the potent energies of anger and fear. As we walk this path of mindfulness, cultivating a wise and compassionate heart, and learning to bring presence to our words and actions, we must inevitably face the great inner storms. Our relationships and our daily lives will continue to trigger our deepest conditioning, and powerful, sometimes overwhelming, emotions will arise. The two most formidable of these are anger and fear. Our habitual response to these energies is usually one of two extremes. Either we suppress them, judging ourselves for feeling them, and trying to push them down into the basement of our consciousness, or we express them uncontrollably, becoming hijacked by their energy and lashing out in ways that cause harm to others and to ourselves. The Buddhist path offers a third way, a wise and compassionate middle path. It is not a path of suppression or of unrestrained expression, but of mindful transformation. It is the art of learning to work with the fire of these emotions, not to be burned by it, but to use its energy as a catalyst for wisdom and freedom. The first step in this transformation is to change our entire view of these emotions. We must stop seeing anger and fear as enemies to be vanquished. They are not evil forces invading our being. They are, in fact, messengers, often carrying vital information. Anger is a powerful, primal energy that often arises when a boundary has been crossed, a deep value has been violated, or an important need is not being met. It is like a smoke alarm blaring in the middle of the night. Our instinct might be to just shut off the piercing noise, but the wise response is to recognize it as a signal, to get up and see where the fire is. To simply suppress anger without understanding its message is like disabling the smoke alarm and going back to sleep while the house burns down. Fear, similarly, is a manifestation of our deep, instinctual intelligence, an ancient protector designed to keep us safe from harm. While in our modern lives it often misfires, creating chronic anxiety about non-physical threats, its root intention is one of protection. To befriend these emotions means to stop shooting the messenger and to learn to listen with wisdom to the message they carry. The process of working with these powerful energies can be broken down into 4 practical, compassionate steps. This is a skill we can cultivate both in meditation and in the heat of the moment. The first step is to recognize. The very instant you feel the heat of anger rising in your chest or the cold grip of fear in your stomach, you pause. You stop the train of your reactivity and you simply name what is present. A soft mental note: anger. Anger is here. Or, this is fear. This simple act of recognition is incredibly powerful. It is the moment of waking up. Before this moment, you are the anger. After this moment, you are the one who is aware of the anger. You have already created a space, and in that space, freedom is born. The second step is to accept, or to allow. This is perhaps the most radical step, as it goes against our every instinct. Our instinct is to fight the unpleasant feeling, to push it away. Instead, we consciously give it permission to be there. We soften our body around the sensation. We unclench our jaw. We drop our shoulders. We say to the feeling, internally, "You are welcome here for now. I will not fight you." This is not the same as condoning the emotion or the action it might lead to. It is simply the cessation of our inner war against what is already present in our reality. It is the practice of dropping the second arrow. The initial feeling is the first arrow. Our resistance and self-judgment is the second self-inflicted wound. By allowing the feeling to be there, we refuse to shoot ourselves again. The third step is to investigate with a gentle, compassionate curiosity. This is not a cold, intellectual analysis. It is an embodied inquiry. You can ask yourself, where do I feel this emotion in my body? Get out of the story in your head, the story of who wronged you or what you're afraid of, and bring your attention directly to the physical sensations. Is the anger a hot pressure in your face? Is the fear a fluttering in your solar plexus? Simply rest your awareness on these raw sensations. Then, you can use your breath to embrace the feeling. Imagine that your breath can gently move into and around the area of tightness or heat. As you breathe in, you acknowledge and hold the sensation with kindness. As you breathe out, you offer it softness and space. You are like a loving parent cradling a crying baby. You are not trying to force the baby to stop crying. You are simply holding it with tenderness, creating a safe space for its distress to unfold and, in its own time, to pass. The fourth and final step is to nurture with self-compassion, which leads to non-identification. After the raw energy of the emotion has been met with acceptance and kindness, its intensity often subsides. In the clarity that follows, we can look more deeply. We can ask, what was this anger protecting? What vulnerable place inside me felt threatened? Perhaps beneath the anger was a deep feeling of sadness, or a need to feel respected or heard. We can ask, what is this fear trying to tell me? What does it believe is at risk? This deeper understanding is transformative. And from this place, we can offer ourselves the nurturing and self-compassion we truly need. We can see that we are not the anger, we are not the fear. We are the vast, loving awareness that is able to hold and understand both anger and fear. The emotion is just a passing wave. We are the deep ocean itself. This process of transformation is beautifully captured in the Zen metaphor of the lotus flower. The lotus is a symbol of purity, beauty, and enlightenment, a flower of exquisite perfection. But where does this perfect flower grow? It does not grow on a pristine, rocky cliffside or in a sterile, filtered pond. The lotus flower grows only out of the thick, dark, smelly mud at the bottom of the pond. The mud is essential. Without the mud, there can be no lotus. In our lives, the mud is our suffering. It is our anger, our fear, our jealousy, our grief, the messy, difficult, painful parts of being human. Our instinct is to try and get rid of the mud, to drain the pond, and live a clean, mud-free existence. But this is an impossible and misguided quest. The path of wisdom does not lie in avoiding the mud, but in learning how to use it as nourishment. Our afflictions are not obstacles to our awakening. They are the very fertilizer that makes awakening possible. Through the alchemy of mindful, compassionate attention, we can take the raw, chaotic energy of our anger and fear and transform it into the patience, wisdom, and compassion of the lotus. Therefore, the goal is not the annihilation of these emotions, but their transformation. The energy of anger, when no longer expressed as blind rage, can become the powerful, focused energy of compassionate action to protect the vulnerable and correct injustice. It becomes sacred passion. The energy of fear, when no longer experienced as paralyzing anxiety, can become the energy of wisdom, prudence, and careful preparation. It becomes our protector. We learn to honor the energy, listen to its message, and channel it wisely. This entire practice of working with emotions is an exquisite balancing act. We don't tighten up and suppress our feelings, which is one extreme, and we don't become lax and let them run wild, which is the other extreme. We learn to walk a careful, attentive path right down the middle. This very principle of balance, of avoiding extremes, is not just for working with emotions. It is the cornerstone of the entire spiritual life. How do we apply ourselves to this path with diligence without becoming rigid and stressed? And how do we relax and accept ourselves without becoming lazy and complacent? This fundamental question leads us to one of the Buddha's most essential teachings, the wisdom of the middle way. Having explored the transformative power of meeting our most difficult emotions with mindful acceptance, we now arrive at a principle that underpins the entire spiritual journey. It is the very essence of the Buddha's unique discovery, the foundational wisdom he shared in his very first teaching after his enlightenment. It is the concept of the middle way. When we hear this phrase, our modern minds might interpret it as a weak compromise, a bland 50-50 split between two options, a path of mediocrity. But this could not be further from the truth. The middle way is not a flaccid compromise, but a sharp, precise, and dynamic path of balance. It is a path that avoids the two dead-end extremes that trap humanity, and it requires great skill, attention, and wisdom to walk. It is the path of the finely tuned instrument, the path of the master craftsman, the path of sustainable and effective practice. To understand the middle way, there is no better guide than the Buddha's own life story. He was a man who lived both extremes to their absolute fullest. He was born a prince, Siddhartha Gautama, and his father, the king, surrounded him with every imaginable form of sensual pleasure. He had palaces for every season, the finest silks, the most delicious foods, beautiful attendants, and was shielded from all sights of suffering no sickness, no old age, no death. He lived for nearly 30 years in this first extreme, the extreme of sensual indulgence, of hedonism, of chasing happiness through gratifying every desire. Yet, in the midst of this luxury, he felt a profound spiritual emptiness. He realized that this constant pursuit of fleeting pleasures, no matter how refined, did not lead to lasting peace. It was a life of chasing shadows, leaving him with a subtle but persistent sense of dissatisfaction. So, he abandoned that life and went to the opposite extreme. He sought out the most renowned spiritual ascetics of his day and became one of them, dedicating himself to the extreme of self-mortification. He practiced fasting until his ribs stuck out like a picket fence and his spine could be seen through the skin of his stomach. He held his breath until he felt sharp, piercing pains in his head. He slept on beds of thorns and exposed his body to the most extreme heat and cold, believing that by conquering the body through force, he could liberate the spirit. But after 6 years of this grueling practice, he was no closer to enlightenment. He was physically emaciated, his mind weakened and agitated by the constant struggle. He realized that torturing the body was just as fruitless as indulging it. It was another dead end. The great breakthrough came as he sat near death from starvation by the banks of a river. He remembered a moment from his childhood sitting peacefully under a rose apple tree while his father performed a state ceremony. In that memory, he had experienced a state of natural, wholesome bliss, a simple joy that was not dependent on extreme pleasure or extreme pain. It was balanced, calm, and clear. Inspired by this memory, he accepted a humble bowl of milk rice from a village girl named Sujata, breaking his long fast. His strength returned. He realized then that the path to awakening did not lie in the opulence of the palace or the misery of the ascetic's cave, but in a middle way that nourished the body and mind without indulging them. It was with this newfound understanding that he sat beneath the Bodhi tree, not too tight and not too loose, and finally attained full enlightenment. This principle of the middle way is our most essential guide in our own meditation practice. We too are constantly falling into one of two extremes. The first is the extreme of striving, of being too tight. This is the meditator who comes to the cushion with a grim determination, a clenched jaw, and a furrowed brow. Their mind is full of ambition. I must concentrate. I must get rid of all thoughts. I must achieve peace. They treat every distraction as a personal failure and meet their wandering mind with frustration and harsh self-judgment. This approach is fueled by aversion to distraction and craving for a specific result. But the mind cannot be conquered by force. Trying to iron out the thoughts only creates more tension and agitation. The other extreme is that of laxity, of being too loose. This is the meditator who succumbs to sloth and torpor, the third hindrance. Their posture slumps, their energy sinks, and their mind becomes a dull, foggy, pleasant blankness. They may even drift off to sleep. While this might feel more pleasant than striving, there is no clarity, no wisdom, and no investigation happening. It is a comfortable dead end. The middle way in meditation is the art of finding that perfect balance between these two. It is the application of relaxed, consistent effort. We are alert, but not tense. We are relaxed, but not dull. We have the discipline to sit, but the kindness to forgive ourselves when our minds wander. It is this gentle, balanced, and persistent attention that allows insight to arise naturally. The Buddha gave a perfect teaching on this to a monk named Sona, who had been a master lute player before he ordained. Sona was practicing with ferocious, unrelenting effort, but he was becoming deeply discouraged, feeling he was making no progress and was on the verge of giving up. The Buddha, knowing his past, went to him and asked, "Sona, as a musician, tell me, what would happen if the strings of your lute were tuned too tightly?" Sona replied, "Venerable sir, they would snap and the lute would be unplayable." The Buddha then asked, "And what would happen if the strings were tuned too loosely?" Sona said, "Sir, the lute would produce a dull, muffled sound or no sound at all." And what, the Buddha asked, happened when the strings were not too tight and not too loose, but were tuned to just the right, even pitch? "Then, sir," Sona replied, "the lute was perfectly in tune and produced a beautiful and melodious sound." The Buddha smiled and said, "In the same way, Sona, energy that is too strained leads to restlessness, and energy that is too lax leads to laziness. Therefore, you should learn to tune the faculties of your mind, finding a beautiful balance of energy. Make that your aim. Our practice is to become a skilled musician of our own consciousness, learning through experience how to tune the strings of our effort so that they produce the beautiful music of peace and wisdom. This principle extends beyond our meditation cushion and into our entire life. The middle way in life means avoiding the extreme of hedonism, the mindless pursuit of pleasure, comfort, and consumerism, while also avoiding the extreme of a harsh, joyless asceticism that denies all beauty and legitimate pleasure. The path is not about becoming a grim-faced Puritan. It is perfectly fine to enjoy a delicious meal, a beautiful piece of art, a walk in nature, or the warmth of friendship. The problem is not pleasure itself, but our desperate, addictive clinging to it. The middle way allows us to savor the wholesome pleasures of life with mindfulness and gratitude, without becoming enslaved by them. It is a life of simplicity, but not of deprivation, a life of discipline, but not of self-punishment. Ultimately, The middle way is the art of balance that weaves through this entire path. It is the balance between discipline and self-compassion, between effort and surrender, between engaging with the world and cultivating inner stillness. We have now investigated the nature of our mind, learned to work with our emotions, and cultivated a heart of wisdom and kindness, all guided by the supreme principle of balance. This brings us to the final and most vital question of our journey. Having walked this path, where does it lead? What is its ultimate fruit? Is the goal to escape this messy, imperfect world and attain some heavenly realm? The final, radical teaching of this path is that the destination is not elsewhere. Freedom is not in some other time or some other place. The ultimate aim of the middle way is to discover that nirvana, the end of suffering, can be realized right here, right now, in the very midst of this imperfect, conditioned world we call samsara. We have now walked the entire expanse of the middle way. We have learned to observe our minds, to work with our hearts, and to bring a conscious, balanced attention to our words and our actions. We have cultivated the tools of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. And so, we arrive at the final, ultimate question that drives every spiritual seeker. Where does this path lead? What is its goal? What is the final destination of this long and patient journey? Our minds, conditioned by the narratives of our culture, immediately imagine a faraway place, a heavenly realm, a perfect state of bliss to be achieved in the distant future or after this life is over. But the most radical, the most profound, and the most liberating teaching of the Buddha is that the destination is not elsewhere. The peace we seek is not in another place or another time. The ultimate fruit of this path, the state known as nirvana, is to be realized right here, right now, in the very midst of this messy, beautiful, imperfect life. The word nirvana, or nibbana, in the original Pali, is shrouded in mystery and misconception. To demystify it, we must first understand its literal meaning. It means to extinguish, or to blow out, as one would extinguish the flame of a candle. What, then, is being extinguished? The Buddha was very clear about this. What is extinguished are the three fires that are the root cause of all our suffering: the fire of greed, craving, and obsessive desire, the fire of hatred, aversion, and anger, and the fire of delusion, confusion, and ignorance. Nirvana is not the annihilation of the self. It is the annihilation of the suffering that is caused by these fires. It is the state of mind that remains when this inner furnace of reactivity has finally cooled. It is not a place we go to. It is the mind's original nature revealed. It is a state of profound peace, unshakable freedom, and luminous clarity. This leads to a startling and beautiful conclusion, one that is central to many schools of Buddhist thought. Samsara is nirvana. Samsara is the world we know, the world of birth and death, of gain and loss, of joy and sorrow. Psychologically, it is the endless, repetitive cycle of our own mind, caught on the wobbly wheel of dukkha, constantly chasing pleasure, fleeing from pain, driven by the winds of our unconscious conditioning. It is our ordinary, confused, and suffering state of existence. We imagine that our task is to escape this chaotic, painful world of samsara in order to arrive at the peaceful, perfect world of nirvana. We see them as two entirely different places. But the great realization of this path is that they are not two different places at all. They are two different ways of seeing the same place. When we look at the world through a mind that is on fire with greed, hatred, and confusion, our experience is samsara. Everything is a potential source of irritation or a potential object to be grasped. Life feels like a struggle, a relentless cycle of hope and disappointment. But when the fires are extinguished, when we look at the very same world, the very same people, the very same life situations through a mind that is cool, clear, spacious, and free, our experience is nirvana. The world has not changed. The circumstances may be identical, but because our mind has changed, everything has changed. The difficult person is no longer seen as an enemy, but as a being who is suffering. The loss of a possession is no longer seen as a catastrophe, but as a natural lesson in impermanence. The beauty of a sunset is no longer something to be desperately clung to, but something to be fully savored in its fleeting perfection. Nirvana is not escaping the world, it is learning to live in the world with a free mind. So how do we find this? Where do we look? We look precisely where we are. This ultimate peace is not a grand, final achievement that happens after decades of meditation. It is available in small, precious moments right now. Every time your mind wanders and you gently, mindfully bring it back to your breath, you experience a micro moment of nirvana. In that instant of pure, non-judgmental awareness, the fires of craving and aversion are out. You are simply present. In the silent gap between one thought ending and the next one beginning, there is the spaciousness of nirvana. When you are washing the dishes, and you are truly just washing the dishes, feeling the warm water, seeing the soap bubbles, fully present with the action, you are not wanting to be anywhere else. You are not caught in the past or the future. That moment of simple, undivided presence is a moment of liberation. Nirvana is not hidden in a cave in the Himalayas. It is hidden in the next breath, in the next footstep, in the next moment of pure, uncluttered awareness. This reframes our understanding of peace. We often think that peace is the absence of noise, the absence of problems, the absence of difficulty. We dream of a life where everything is smooth, easy, and quiet. But this is a fragile, conditional peace that is dependent on external circumstances, which are, by their nature, uncontrollable. The peace of nirvana is an unconditional peace. It is not the absence of noise, but the ability of the mind to remain still in the midst of the noise. It is the deep, profound quiet of the ocean depths, which remain undisturbed even while a hurricane rages on the surface. It is the stability of the great mountain, which is not shaken by the worldly winds of praise and blame, gain and loss. The practice is not about trying to control the weather of our lives. It is about cultivating a mind that is so spacious, so balanced, and so free that it can welcome any weather without being disturbed. There is a beautiful story that captures the essence of this entire journey. It is the story of a poor man who long ago visited a wealthy friend. The friend, seeing his plight, took a priceless jewel and secretly sewed it into the lining of the poor man's coat while he slept. The next day, the man left, completely unaware of the treasure he was carrying. He lived for years in destitution, wandering from place to place, begging for food, sleeping in shelters, always looking for happiness and security outside of himself, believing he was fundamentally lacking. He grew old and weary from his fruitless search. One day, he happened to meet his old, wealthy friend again. The friend was shocked to see him in such a wretched state and said, "My friend, what have you been doing all these years? I gave you a priceless jewel, more than enough to provide for you for the rest of your life. Where is it?" The man was confused, but his friend showed him the hidden seam in his old, tattered coat. With trembling hands, the man tore open the lining, and there, radiant and dazzling, was the jewel he had been carrying with him all along. His poverty had never been a result of lacking the treasure, but only of his own ignorance that he already possessed it. We are all this man. Our true nature this, clear, calm, luminous awareness that is capable of experiencing nirvana, the priceless jewel. It has been sewn into the fabric of our being from the very beginning. It is not something we need to create or acquire, but we have forgotten it is there. And so we spend our lives searching outside of ourselves, seeking peace in relationships, security in careers, and happiness in possessions, all the while carrying the ultimate treasure within us. The entire spiritual path, all the meditation and all the teachings, is not a process of gaining something new. It is a process of remembering what has been forgotten. It is the journey of turning our attention inward, and with the gentle hands of mindfulness, finding the seam in our own consciousness and rediscovering the radiant peace that has been our true nature all along. The journey is not about becoming someone else, someone enlightened. It is, at last, a return home, a relaxation into the truth of who we have already been. We have traveled a great distance together on this inward journey. We began in a place that is familiar to so many of us, a place of inner noise, of feeling overwhelmed by the restless, chattering monkey mind. From that place of quiet desperation, we began a gentle investigation. We dared to look directly at the nature of our own unease, our dukkha, and we discovered that it was not a personal failing, but a fundamental part of the human condition, born from our resistance to the universal truth of impermanence, anicca, and our deep clinging to the illusion of a solid, separate self, anatta. With this diagnosis in hand, we were given a maptha, Four Noble Truths, clear and practical guide for the journey from suffering to freedom. We learned to walk this path step by step. We started with the simple, profound act of returning to our breath, finding an anchor in the present moment. We learned to inhabit our bodies, to listen to the language of our feelings, and to observe the ever-changing weather of our minds. We then turned to the garden of the heart, learning to clear away the weeds of the five hindrances and to actively cultivate the beautiful, healing flowers of loving kindness, compassion, and the profound, stabilizing wisdom of equanimity. Guided by the principle of the middle way, we learned to transform our speech and our actions into expressions of this newfound clarity and care. And after this long journey, we discovered the most surprising truth of all, that the destination we seek, the peace of nirvana, is not a distant shore to be reached after a lifetime of striving. We discovered that it is here, available now, in the space between our thoughts, in the stillness of a mindful breath, in the simple act of being fully present with our life as it is. We learned that the goal is not to silence the mind, but to befriend it. It is not to eradicate our thoughts and feelings, but to change our relationship to them, to hold them all in a vast, compassionate awareness. The core message of this entire journey is this: peace is not a future achievement, it is a present moment capacity. It is the peace of non-resistance, the freedom that arises when we stop fighting with reality and learn to meet each moment with the open, curious, and kind attention we have been practicing. You do not need to fix your life in order to find peace. You only need to be fully present for it. The path has now been illuminated. The tools have been placed in your hands. The journey from here is your own, and it is walked not in giant leaps, but in single conscious breaths, one after another. It does not demand perfection, only a gentle, persistent intention to keep beginning again. The priceless jewel of your own peaceful, luminous nature has never been lost. It has only been forgotten. It is waiting for you patiently in the quiet depths of your own heart. The freedom you seek is not something to be earned or won, but a birthright to be reclaimed. The work is simply to turn inward, to look deeply, and to at long last come home.